Chapter 2269. It's nothing. It's probably because the training intensity has been too high recently. The person who spoke was a white-clothed beauty with short blonde hair. She was Muzo-sensei from the pilot school's infirmary. After that, Yulia suddenly fainted. It was the class committee member, Meshi, and Shinji who brought her to the school's infirmary. She's been working too hard recently. Meshi had a pained expression on her face. Yulia still hadn't woken up. She was currently lying on a hospital bed, and Muzo-sensei had just put her on a glucose drip. She needs to rest, Muzo-sensei said calmly. Let her stay here. I'll take good care of her. If you're really worried, you can leave one person behind. However, what about the summer festival? I'll stay. Meshi took the initiative to request. Zensei-kun, you're in charge of the performance part. We can't do it without you. Even if I'm absent from the chorus part, it won't affect the performance too much. Oh, okay. Muzo-sensei brought a pot of hot water into the infirmary. In the infirmary, Meshi met her eyes. Speaking of which, it was her first time entering the school's infirmary because of Yulia's fainting. As a pilot, if anything happened to her body, the base's medical team would be sent over immediately. It seems that you have a good relationship with this student. Muzo-sensei smiled as she poured a cup of water for her. Are you used to the life here? Meshi couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. Muzo-sensei said casually, as an exchange student, Meshi-san, although I don't have much of a presence, I'm still a teacher of this school. I like the life here very much. Actually, you don't have to stay here all the time. Muzo-sensei looked at Yulia, who was lying on a hospital bed. She should be able to wake up after resting enough. If you don't participate in the summer festival, you might regret it. Meshi just smiled and didn't say anything. She slowly drank a mouthful of hot water. She was indeed interested in the summer festival. This seemed to be the specialty of the second upper capital pilot school. Under the threat of the attack, the other bases and other pilot schools have been maintaining high pressure. They were not as relaxed as here. The students were enjoying the real school life. However, Meshi had the self-awareness of being a driver. Participating could be said to be a change in life, but it was not to the extent that it was necessary to participate. Don't you know? Teacher Muzi suddenly smiled and said, Legend has it that the person who receives the collective blessings of the students during the summer festival will have the chance to fulfill his wish. What? It's just that there's a chance. Teacher Muzi smiled and said, Maybe it's just a legend to increase the atmosphere of the summer festival, or maybe it's because of the yearning for beautiful things. I don't know when it started, but there was such a saying. Meshi suddenly realized that this was easier to accept. Nice to meet you, Teacher Muzi. Nice to meet you too. The beauty with short blonde hair smiled again. Meshi suddenly felt sleepy. The appearance of the beauty with short blonde hair in front of her seemed to become a little blurred. Her eyelids began to become heavy, and she couldn't open her eyes. She subconsciously said, I want to, and I'm also a little sleepy. Then rest for a while. There's still room here. Okay, she almost fell to the ground, but Teacher Muzi caught her in time. It's easy to catch a cold if you sleep on the ground. This is not good. The woman chuckled and helped Meshi to another bed. Then, she sat aside and casually picked up a magazine to read. After a while, the door of the infirmary slowly opened. Two men wearing masks entered. Teacher Muzi looked at the watch on her wrist and said indifferently, We're 3 minutes late. Today is the summer festival. One of the men quickly said, Where are the people? She pointed at the bed next to her. The two men walked closer and smiled. We didn't expect to see two people at the same time. This is our lucky day. Hurry up. Those guys from the picket team seem to have found something. Teacher Muzi was still reading the magazine with her head down. She didn't care about the two men taking away Yulia and Meshi on the bed. Until the two men took them away, she began to tidy up the place. When she was tidying up the beds, she suddenly stopped and looked at the head of one of the beds with some confusion. Next to the pillow, something was placed at this time. It was a black and white plush bear. When Teacher Muzi subconsciously picked up the plush bear, this was the bed Yulia was lying on just now. She shook her head and didn't care. She casually put the plush bear on the table. but something seemed to be missing. So, she chuckled, took a rose from the vase, and put it in the plush bear's hand. At this time, the phone rang. There was a report that a student accidentally broke his leg when he was checking the stage. Okay, don't move him. I'll come over now. There were no classes for the whole day. There were self-organized activities in the classroom and on the field. This was a celebration, and not all of them were performances. There were all kinds of activities. There was even a haunted house that used an old-school building in the school. Shinji, can I have you all to myself today? Let's go to the haunted house. Okay? In the face of Mary's enthusiasm, the little boy still had some hesitation in his heart. He shook his head and said, "No, I still want to practice the song for the chorus. If I play it wrong, it will be troublesome." Mary didn't force him this time. The serious Shinji is so cute. Tonight, let's watch the fireworks together, okay? It was the last program of the summer festival. He didn't respond or refuse, as if he was used to accepting everything passively. He actually didn't understand how someone could like such a useless and cowardly character. He didn't need to do anything, and he didn't need to work hard. He just needed to feel sorry for himself. There would always be someone who cared about him, approached him, and came to his side. They liked him. Wishful thinking. It was purely wishful thinking. Why am I so terrible? In the empty classroom, Shinji didn't get up for a long time, and the feeling of discomfort in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. He slowly sighed and quickly came to a conclusion. It wasn't him who was wrong, but the world. Running away was super useful. After tidying up, he decided to go to the piano room. But when he passed by Meshi's seat, he stopped. He remembered that Meshi was staying in the infirmary to take care of Yulia. He didn't know if she was disappointed because she couldn't participate in the summer festival. He saw Meshi's school bag hanging next to her desk, and the pure white feather mascot was quietly hanging there. He was in a daze, and he didn't know why, but he still cared about it. He subconsciously wanted to pick up the feather. The moment he touched it, "You're still here." The classroom door instantly opened, and the class committee member rushed in and grabbed his hand. "I prepared a dress for your performance. You also need to put on makeup. Don't just stay here, come quickly. Meet me at classmate. I can walk by myself." Mr. Ludick was sitting in the courtyard of the entire teaching building, eating hamburgers and drinking Coke, and looking at the documents in his hand. Beside him was a hot office secretary. "Well, there's no problem. Just arrange it like this." He nodded. The secretary took the documents. "Then I'll go do something." Mr. Ludick suddenly held the secretary's hand and even gently tickled her palm and said with a smile, "Come to my office in the evening when we set off the fireworks. The view there is very good. I think it will be very good to watch the fireworks in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass." A man who knows how to play. The secretary's face turned red, and she nodded slightly. If they did it in that kind of place, it would probably be unforgettable. "Wait," Mr. Ludick suddenly said. The secretary was stunned, but she saw that Ludick had already stood up and walked quickly to the aisle. In the aisle, two men wearing masks were pushing a big box. When the two men saw Ludick coming, they suddenly turned around. "Wait, what's this?" "It's a prop for the performance on behalf of the principal." One of the men lowered his head and said, "Prop?" Mr. Ludick blinked. "Is there a serial number?" "All the props used in the celebration must be checked, and illegal items are prohibited." "It's been checked, don't worry." "I'm worried." Mr. Ludick smiled casually. Damn it. The two men instantly cursed in their hearts. Does this guy know how to talk? "Open it." Mr. Ludick put his hand on the big wooden box. The two men looked at each other, nodded, and were about to open the box. At the moment when they were about to open the box, one of the men suddenly punched Mr. Ludick's nose. The fist was so fast and sudden that it was about to hit Mr. Ludick's nose, but Mr. Ludick tilted his neck and narrowly dodged it. After dodging the fist, Ludick instantly grabbed the man's arm and directly threw him over his shoulder to the wooden box. The wooden box was instantly smashed open. There were actually two girls in the broken wooden box. Yulia and Meshi? Ludick's face suddenly changed. "Who are you?" "Ah!" An exclamation sounded at this time. It was the secretary who witnessed all this from a distance. Mr. Ludick instinctively looked at the secretary But at the same time, he gave the other masked man a chance. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through the man's face, and he directly took out a fist-sized grenade from his clothes. The safety pin was instantly pulled off. "Be careful." Bang! The sound was not as powerful as expected, and then a cloud of thick smoke burst out. In the thick smoke, Ludic hurriedly grabbed something. He grasped something tightly. When the smoke dispersed, the secretary hurriedly ran over. "Ludic, I'm fine. It's just—" Mr. Ludic lowered his head and looked at the unconscious Meshi on the ground. Yulia and the two masked men were nowhere to be seen. This informed the student union immediately. Ludic took a deep breath and calmly said, "Keep this matter a secret for now. Don't cause panic. Follow me to the monitoring room. Their target is obviously Yulia and Meshi. They only took one away, and they may come back at any time." After saying this, Ludic directly picked up Meshi and strode forward. Outside the driver's school, in a civilian house, it was a complete blank. On the rough concrete floor, a messy communication device was built randomly. The radio waves on the screen flickered, and a low and slightly angry voice sounded. "Why, Yulia? The current situation is very urgent. We only took one away and didn't see clearly. Yulia is also a driver of Songlei. I want Meshi. We've been exposed, and the school will definitely be on guard. Forget it. Don't create more problems." "Then what about Yulia? Bring her back first. It's better than nothing. She may be useful for other things. As for Meshi, I'll think of another way. Don't forget our purpose." The two masked men suddenly looked solemn, clenching their fists and covering their chests. For the gate of the new world. In the driver's school park, in the snack stall area, a silver-haired girl with a black-eye mask was sitting in front of a stall selling fried steak. The temporary table was already full of food. "President, do you think we can't recognize you like this? Forget it, as long as you're happy. This stall was set up for you." A student in a black school uniform who was frying the steak couldn't help but smile bitterly. Indeed, this kind of marinade was made with special chili. How could ordinary people like it? Are you afraid of chili? Therefore, even though they knew the president was here, no one came to try it. In the lively snack stall area, this place was deserted. "Can I have one?" "Oh, okay." The stall owner nodded subconsciously and saw a student wearing a fox mask. The mask should be bought at another stall area temporarily. The workmanship was a bit rough. Although he was wearing a mask, there was nothing surprising about it. Let alone a mask, there were several boys wearing swimsuits in the parade today. The student celebration was lawless. "But this thing is very spicy. Can you stand it?" The stall owner kindly reminded. "I'll do my best." "Okay, please wait a moment." The stall owner nodded. At this time, the boy wearing the fox mask walked to the table next to the president and sat down directly next to her. The stall owner glanced at him and confirmed that this was a guy who was not afraid of death. Just wait for the registration of the anorectal department. He decided to add some seasoning to the steak. She sat with him. The silver-haired girl blinked her eyes, seemingly puzzled, and naturally reached out her hand, wanting to take off the fox mask on the boy's face. "You can't take it off," he suddenly said softly. The silver-haired girl tilted her head, looking puzzled. "I've thought about it." He seemed to have a smile. "If you take it off, I'll disappear." The silver-haired girl was stunned, and her outstretched fingers suddenly trembled. He smiled again and said, "Today, I'll accompany you." Chapter 2270. Hand in hand. Then there was an incredulous look and shocked exclamation. "That seems to be the president?" That was the president. The black hollowed-out eye patch that looked like a toy didn't hide any of his attributes. It wasn't strange to run into the president in school. Even though the frequency of them running into each other wasn't high, it felt like there would always be a time when they would run into each other. The one holding the president's hand. "Who is it?" "I don't know, but it feels like we don't dare to ask." They held hands and strolled in the school. Gradually, the exclamations disappeared. Gradually, they were like two students strolling around. Even if they met face to face, there was no surprise. "Is this all?" he suddenly asked curiously. The silver-haired girl nodded silently. "I am usually like this." He looked around and whispered, You are always not by their side, but you are always in their heart. Because I am the coordinate. The silver-haired girl was expressionless, and her eyes were gray. So, they will not be lost. Tell me about you. It will be boring. The silver-haired girl shook her head. Suddenly, she hesitated and asked tentatively, "Are you interested?" "Because I'm interested, that is why I am here." He squatted down and put his hand on the silver-haired girl's head. "Otherwise, we will not even have a chance to meet." The silver-haired girl was silent for a while before saying slowly, "I don't like this feeling. It is okay if you don't want to say." He said softly, "We can go somewhere else. Today is all yours. Where do you want to go?" The silver-haired girl thought about it, pulled his sleeve, and pointed at the sign in front of them. Still in shock, it was a special program, the billboard of the haunted school. At this time, many students had gathered their courage and walked toward it. Faintly, there seemed to be some weak screams coming from afar. "A haunted house," he thought. "Can't we?" The silver-haired girl asked with some uneasiness. "Let's go. Where is this?" Meshi woke up, but she found that she was no longer in the infirmary. She was in the headmaster's office, and the headmaster's substitute, Mr. Ludick, was looking at her. "You fainted. Do you remember what happened before you fainted?" Ludick asked directly. Meshi frowned in confusion. Her eyes gradually became clear as she said in a deep voice, "Mr. Ludick, did something happen? I should be feeling very sleepy after drinking the water that Teacher Muzi gave me. What time is it now?" "Someone kidnapped you and Yulia. I only had time to save you. Yulia is already gone." Ludick also frowned. "You mean Teacher Muzi?" Meshi nodded. "Help me call Teacher Muzi in the healthcare room." Ludick pressed the button on the desk. "Tell her that I need to talk to her and ask her to come to the principal's office." "You should find Yulia as soon as possible," Meshi said in a low voice. "We are already doing it," Ludick said seriously. "The student union is also taking action. I also informed the people in the Defense Institute. But we can't make it public. Obviously, someone is planning something to cause chaos in the school, which will only make us more passive." Meshi thought for a while and said, "Yulia is already the pilot of Tsonglei. Through the linkage between Tsonglei and her, we should be able to locate her current position. Kurlit has this technology, so it's impossible that you don't have it here." "I've tried, but it's useless." Ludick smiled bitterly. "I've tried all the methods I can think of, but I got nothing in the past half an hour. Obviously, someone has blocked all the positioning technology we have." Meshi took a deep breath. "The other party is very familiar with the pilot, even this school. So, there's a mole?" Ludick's eyes flashed with a touch of admiration. According to the information he had, Meshi and Yulia should be very close friends. His friend was taken away, but he was still able to calmly analyze the situation and didn't act rashly. No wonder he was the driver of Kaolot. He wasn't someone the lazy students of Second Upper Capital could compare to. When Teacher Muzi comes, we might be able to find out more. Ludick slowly exhaled. "That is if she comes." Meshi thought for a while and said, "Can I see Ms. Muzi's information?" Ludick opened the drawer and took out a stack of documents. "I thought you would ask, so I prepared them in advance. But there's nothing special except for one thing." She flipped through the pages at an extremely fast speed as if she was scanning them. Deep in thought, she asked, "Is he recommended by President Calvin? Is this a special place?" Ludick blinked and said, "Most of the teachers in the school were promoted by Calvin before, including me, after the school suppressed the student union. What else is it?" Meshi couldn't help but frown. Ludick shrugged and said, "She's single. Ms. Muzi is a first-class beauty, but she's still single. Don't you think it's too much?" Meshi took a deep breath again and looked at him with a very serious expression. "Please don't joke at this time." Ludick sighed and said, "If I don't joke now, I'm afraid I won't be able to laugh in a while." At this time, the communicator rang again. Ludick's expression turned serious after he picked it up. "I can't find Ms. Muzi. She disappeared from the school's site. The people who captured Yulia should appear again." Meshi said in a low voice, "According to what you said, their goal is not only Yulia, but also me. Now I'm still here. What do you want to do?" Ludick frowned. This child had a very dedicated spirit. But this was not a good thing. Since I'm also a target, then I'll create a second chance for them to capture me. Unless they give up on me, they will definitely appear again, and soon. If you can think of it, they can also think of it. Ludic shook his head. It's useless. What if Ms. Muzi is not the only spy in the school? Meshi said seriously. As long as they feel that there is still a chance, this is what we can do now. We have to give a try. Otherwise, we can only wait passively. I will do my best to support you. So, what are you going to do? Ludic asked in a low voice. Meshi said, organize a few teams to conduct a search around the school. I will join one of the teams. These teams will not only have people from the student council, but also people from the defense station. Okay, I will arrange it immediately. Ludic nodded. It was Meshi's turn to frown. You can really order the student council? It's very hurtful to say that. Ludic shrugged and said, this is called communication, okay? Meshi was suspicious, but did not say anything. What is this? At the entrance to the haunted school, the boy with the fox mask was looking curiously at the silver-haired president with a black eye mask. The silver-haired girl was holding 2 tags in her hands. Oh, index. Comment. The girl was very direct. And then, he asked with more curiosity. The silver-haired girl thought about it and said, scary leave. Not scary stay. He was shocked, and then he chuckled. Since it's a haunted house, if it's not scary, wouldn't it lose its original meaning? The silver-haired girl raised her head seriously. Haunted house, love element. 8 points, the meaning of a haunted house. Screams came from the old school, accompanied by the howling of the wind. It was like a monologue from the haunted house itself. Haunted house, me? Then, are you afraid of ghosts? He asked with curiosity. The girl thought about it and then slowly raised one of the tags, the X tag. But even though the girl's thought process was strange, he could easily accept it, or perhaps let it be. I didn't expect to be able to work together with Miss Meshi. It's my honor, the girl said with unusual dignity. She was indeed a very dignified person. The vice chairperson of the student council's police force, Millet. Let's not waste time, Miss Millet, Meshi said in a hurry. Even though our mission this time is to lure the enemy out, we need to act like we are fully focused on the search. Understand? Don't worry. We will cooperate with you. Millet nodded seriously. We will try our best not to slow you down. Slow me down? Meshi was a bit dazed. She shook her head and said, I feel like I have worked with you before. I even have a feeling that I can leave my back to you. Millet opened her mouth in surprise and said with a hint of surprise, is this encouragement? Let's just say it is. Meshi said, as she quickly loaded her pistols. She stuffed one in the pocket of her skirt and another behind her waist. She only used tranquilizer bullets, which could hurt but not kill. Moo! The old school building. It was limited to 1 experience, and at most 4 people could go together. He and the silver-haired girl's companions were a pair of boy and girl who had a vague feeling. The boy was flamboyant and the girl was shy. Along the way, she held the boy's arm tightly. The boy walked in front and talked loudly, commenting on the staff members who appeared from time to time to act as ghosts. It seemed that he had done his homework. The silver-haired girl carried 2 tags along the way, but she didn't raise them even once. Perhaps because the next part of the road, the corridor leading to the dance studio, was too long and too quiet. The boy couldn't help but say, you know, the haunted house of the summer festival is actually a tradition. The girl was surprised. Is it? It didn't happen last year? The boy smiled and said, because it suddenly stopped for a few years. You just entered the school this year, so you don't know. I heard it from the seniors who have already graduated. The girl asked curiously, why suddenly? The boy's voice suddenly became low, and his face was solemn. He said seriously, I heard that there was an accident that year. There was a couple like us who insisted on going to the dance studio in the end. In the dance studio, it was said that a girl's ghost lived there. She liked dancing very much and was a natural dancer. Unfortunately, Hanako's legs were amputated because of a car accident. From then on, Hanako could no longer stand on her beloved stage. Later, Hanako committed suicide. Then someone saw a figure dancing in the dance studio at midnight. It was Hanako. Moreover, she only had her upper body. The road leading to the dance studio was dark, and the old wooden corridor made squeaking sounds because of the footsteps. The girl subconsciously held the boy's arm tighter. The boy continued. Hanako wanted a pair of legs that could let her stand up again. She liked the girl's legs, so she appeared in front of the couple. It was this corridor. Don't say it. The girl was even more scared. The boy chuckled, but continued. At the end of the corridor, there was a figure half shorter than a normal person. Hanako didn't have legs, so she could only lie on the ground. She crawled, and crawled all the way. There were 2 bright red bloodstains on the floor, which were the blood from her amputated legs. Don't say it, okay? The girl said in a trembling voice. Give me your legs. The boy suddenly became crazy, and his face was ferocious. He directly grabbed the girl's legs with both hands. Give me, the girl screamed, and in an instant, she left the boy and ran forward in fear. The boy was dumbfounded at this time, and felt that it had gone too far, so he was stunned on the spot. The boy sighed, looking at the other 2 companions behind him, the boy with the fox mask and the girl with the silver hair. He scratched his head awkwardly. It seems that I went too far. I'll go find her. Seeing that his companions were indifferent, the boy shook his head and walked quickly to the depths of the corridor. The girl with the silver hair was still expressionless, but she took the initiative to hold his hand and walked forward along the boy's path. They seemed to hear something. It sounded like the sound of someone falling to the ground. The wooden floor, a thud. The boy with the fox mask and the girl with the silver hair quickly caught up with the boy in front of them. They saw that the boy had fallen to the ground and was frightened. On the road ahead, in the depths of the corridor, a short figure was slowly crawling out. It was the girl who was scared away. The girl was crawling on the ground, crawling all the way. The girl's legs were broken, and there were 2 bright red bloodstains on the wooden floor along the way. The boy suddenly screamed, rolling and crawling to escape with all his might. The girl continued to crawl with a pale face and messy hair like a ghost. Finally, the girl crawled in front of the girl with the silver hair. She stretched out her withered hand and suddenly grabbed the girl's leg. Give me your leg, she made a sound, but her lips were suddenly blocked by something. It was a wooden sign with the word X. The girl blinked and let out a rather cute sound of surprise. President? Fail. What's wrong with you? It's obviously super scary. The girl crawled to her feet. Everything around her was a trap. Everyone in front of us was scared out of their wits. President, did you read the script? The girl with the silver hair just shook her head slightly, and at the same time, she put away the X sign. How is it done? The boy's voice came from behind. I screwed up. The girl sighed. They were the actors who organized this haunted house, the legendary Atmosphere group. Every time, 4 people experienced it, but in fact, only 2 students really experienced it. The dance studio at the finish line was the backstage of this project. A group of students changed into different costumes here. The gun salute sounded to congratulate the 2 people who had successfully reached the finish line, the boy with the fox mask and the president with the silver hair girl. The boy introduced himself. He was the main planner of this haunted house project. This was his last year in school, and he was about to graduate. Leader, I'm going to the next wave. The girl and another boy changed into different costumes and left the dance studio. You should take a rest. You've been busy. The boy just smiled and didn't say anything. When only the boy and the victory duo were left, the boy begged, please don't tell anyone about this, or else the haunted house in the afternoon won't be able to continue. The girl with the silver hair nodded slowly and then asked why. The boy couldn't help but be stunned. What why? The girl with the silver hair said, the haunted house, this year. Isn't it because I'm overage and have to leave school? The boy opened his mouth, thought about it, and said, maybe it's because I want to leave something behind before I leave. Actually, not many people know about the supernatural of this dance studio. The girl with the silver hair didn't say anything, but she slowly raised the O sign in her hand. President, you've graduated, congratulations. So, the boy raised his head, and in a moment of shock, his face gradually relaxed and gradually disappeared until it finally disappeared. Thank you. You're welcome. The girl with the silver hair smiled. The boy with the fox mask took one last look at the dance studio and asked slowly, are we leaving? In a corner of the dance studio, there was a picture of the boy and another girl. "Hanako?" he asked softly. "Yes." The girl with the silver hair nodded. Chapter 2271. Failed, 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 failed. Many disappointed faces walked away. Before they knew it, they had already walked through half of the park. The only one who passed was the boy in the haunted house's dance studio. "I'm tired." The silver-haired girl looked at the boy in the fox mask and said, although she was expressionless, she looked pitiful, like a cat silently waiting in a cardboard box at the corner of the street. "Rest here," he said softly. The silver-haired girl nodded and directly fell in his arms, quietly falling asleep without warning. Looks like there aren't any useful clues here. In the teaching building, a small team was walking, the team led by Meshi. As for the vice chairman of the picket team, Milei, she was only here to support. "This seems to be Miss Meshi's class?" Milei stopped and looked into the classroom. There was no one in the classroom. "Yes." Meshi nodded and directly walked into the classroom. After a simple inspection, she finally returned to her seat and stomped her feet. "What is this?" Milei walked closer and saw Meshi pick up a pendant from her bag, a white feather. "It's just a mascot." Meshi shook her head and directly took off the pendant and put it into her pocket. "Let's go to the next place. We've discovered Miss Muzi's whereabouts." At this moment, the communicators in their ears suddenly rang. Milei narrowed her eyes and chuckled. As expected of a mascot, luck is about to come. At this moment, the beauty with short blonde hair casually appeared on the platform of the teaching building. Her hands were in the pockets of her white lab coat, and she had a faint smile on her face. The heels of her shoes were rhythmically hitting the floor. She suddenly stopped and looked to her left and right. The students in black uniforms, as well as the reinforcements from the defense post, walked out one after another. "Miss Muzi, please allow yourself to be arrested. Now, you're suspected of kidnapping the driver. Please cooperate with the investigation." The speaker was the student picket team's chairman, Jamia. "Just to cooperate with the investigation?" The beauty with short blonde hair chuckled and slowly took out her hands from her pockets. "Stop." A member of the defense station raised the tranquilizer gun in his hand. "Don't be so nervous. I will cooperate with you." The beautiful woman with short blonde hair smiled slightly, but she took out a cigarette box and a lighter and lit one. "After all, I didn't plan to escape. Besides, there are so many of you, you can't escape, right? Take me to the one who can make the decision." Jamia frowned and said directly, "Please restrain her first. Everyone, we've caught the culprit. Currently, Senior Jamia is bringing Miss Muzi to the principal's office." The members of Meshi's team were on their way to the scene, but they received a notification that they had successfully captured Teacher Muzi. So fast, Meshi subconsciously stopped in his tracks. "I think it's because there's no resistance at all." While Milei understood the situation, she said, "Originally, I was going to bring it to the president, but the president instructed that everything today will be handed over to Principal Ludick. So, let's go to the principal's office," Meshi said directly. At that moment, 4 or 5 students walked over, and one of them called out to her, "Meshi? And Mairi-senpai? Why are you?" "Shinji-san." Meshi frowned. She quickly gave Milei a look and walked forward. "You are the one. Why are you here?" Shinji scratched his head and said, "I was caught to change my clothes and put on makeup. My plan to practice before the performance was ruined." Another bespectacled boy hurriedly said, "Meshi-san, shouldn't you be taking care of Yulia in the infirmary? Why are you here? Is Yulia all right?" "I have something to do, so I came out." Meshi said indifferently, "Mairi-san, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I won't be able to attend the class performance. The student council needs my help with something." Mairi-san looked at the black-clothed students behind Meshi with a hint of awe. Go, we'll work hard for your share. Is it okay?" Shinji asked hesitantly, "You really can't attend? You've been training for a long time. This." Meshi grabbed Shinji's hand. "Take it with you, I'll also participate in this mascot." After saying that, Meshi turned around and quickly left with the black-clothed students. Meshi-san is really valiant, as expected of an official pilot. Zinji-kun, it's really enviable that you can live together with Meshi-san. Shinji-san, He saw that Shinji seemed to be a bit off, and he froze on the spot while looking down at his hand. On his hand, there was a feather pendant. I didn't expect it to come back to me. He muttered, "This kind of karma." "Shinji, are you okay?" Xiang Jia asked with concern. "Something's wrong." Shinji suddenly chuckled. "I suddenly remembered that I have something urgent to do, so I need to leave for a while." "What?" Xiang Jia frowned. "It's almost time for the public performance." "At this time? I'll try to come back as soon as possible." Shinji quickly said, "That's all. Also, Yulia told me that she'd be more willing to accept you than me. That's why even a four-eyed otaku has a future. After all, this world is full of evil intentions." "What?" The door to the headmaster's office opened instantly. There were quite a few people inside. Apart from Ludik, who was in charge, there was also Jimiya, who was the chairman of the picket squad, 2 students from the picket squad, a few men from the Defense Institute, and Teacher Muzi. The beautiful woman with short blonde hair was sitting on the sofa while holding a cup of coffee under everyone's gazes. Meshi was about to speak, but Ludik shook his head lightly. She said that she would wait for you. "It seems that everyone is here." Muko-sensei put down her cup. "I know where Yulia is, and it's easy to let her go. We just need to exchange Meshi for her." Everyone's expression changed slightly. The officer from the Defense Institute frowned. "Do you know what you just said? Meshi-san is the official pilot of Kurlit. You're committing a crime against humanity." Muko-sensei chuckled and walked to Ludik's desk. Everyone was at daggers drawn, but she just put down a communicator on the desk. "Acting headmaster, this is your phone number." Ludik's expression was calm. Under Muko-sensei's gaze, he suddenly chuckled and picked up the communicator, putting it on speaker. "Hello, I'm Ludik." A low and processed voice came from the other side. "Muko-sensei, you should have said your request, right? Use Meshi in exchange for Yulia." Ludik said indifferently, "If I'm not wrong, you are from the Dark World battlefront, right? The mainstream of the world is fighting against the impact disaster. Other than the Dark World battlefront, I can't think of anyone who would openly target the pilot of God Eater. It's fine if you don't want to hand over Meshi." However, the voice on the other side sounded again. "As long as you're willing to send her to the observation room on the 23rd floor of the school base." "Who are you?" Ludik's expression changed slightly, and his calm voice became anxious. "I'll wait for you for 2 hours at most. After 2 hours, I'll take back the things underground." "Calvin, it's you." Ludik took a deep breath. "You're not dead. I left a gift for the school, which is enough to destroy the entire school in an instant." The voice sounded again. "Don't try to evacuate the students. I said it would be destroyed in an instant, and it only takes the time to press a button. Remember, I'll wait for you for 2 hours at most. Meshi or Yulia, this choice is not difficult for you. Ludik, think carefully. Muko-sensei will tell you what to do next." The communication was suddenly cut off. "This old bastard, what the hell is he doing?" Ludik glared at Muko-sensei in front of him and took deep breaths. "I'm not a person who can keep calm all the time." Muko-sensei smiled and said, "Is that so? But I think that all the students, all the people in the school added together, is enough reason for you to keep calm. Right, Vice Principal? Perhaps this matter is already beyond your scope of authority. I suggest that you discuss this with the Student Council President as soon as possible." Ludik did not speak. Everyone looked at him, only to see that his expression was uncertain, and his gaze had already landed on Meshi. "Then use me in exchange." Meshi met Ludik's gaze and said calmly, 2 more hours." Ludik shook his head dejectedly. "Don't be in a hurry to make a decision. Let me think about it." "Jamiya, where are you going?" Miss Millet suddenly called out. "This matter is already beyond the scope of the vice principal's authority," the chairman of the picket team said calmly. "This concerns the entire school. I have to report to the president. Millet, stay here and watch over them at all times." I understand." He directly left with his people. Ludik sighed slowly. "Please find a place to entertain Muko-sensei. I want to think about some things alone. Also, Meshi, stay here. I have something to say to you." They did not go far. They were actually still outside the vice principal's office. Meshi looked at the silent Ludik and frowned. Using me in exchange for Yulia only means that their real target is me, so I can understand the exchange, but what does it have to do with the underground observation room? I knew you would ask. Ludic smiled bitterly. They're also curious. Meshi said calmly. What is in the observation room? I'm afraid it's something you don't want to know. Ludic sighed slowly, but waved at Meshi, indicating for her to come closer to do her work. The moment the girl came closer, the floorboards started to sink. Meshi did not panic, only watching all this happen vigilantly. The floorboards continued to sink, and in a short while, they were already deep underground. Today, it was a little difficult to find the president. Other than confirming that the president was in school, Jimia did not have a good way to directly contact the president. Jimia could only go directly to the office of the president of the student union, hoping that she was tired from playing and had come back early to rest. However, the moment the office door opened, he saw an unfamiliar figure. Who are you? Why are you here? The tense atmosphere instantly spread, and Jimia even immediately raised the tranquilizer gun he had equipped, pointing it forward, at a fellow who was standing in front of the president's office with his back facing him. I didn't. He slowly raised both his hands. I just wanted to confirm some things. Turn around. Jimia did not buy it, and directly shouted coldly. Trespassing into the president's office without permission will be dealt with according to the school rules. We're the school rules. He slowly turned around, his face filled with curiosity. The pickets are to enforce the school rules. The school rules are as scary as tigers, leopards, jackals, and wolves to students. But the problem is, I don't seem to know what the school rules are exactly. You seem to be in Miss Meshi's class. Could it be you are also from the Dark World Battlefront? Jimia instantly frowned. We have known each other for a long time. It's just that you don't remember. He shook his head. Perhaps you are not the original you. Don't be agitated. We have indeed met before. I have even seen your corpse. Jimia snorted coldly, and without saying anything more, he directly fired the tranquilizer gun. However, an unbelievable scene happened at that moment. The tranquilizer gun actually stopped in front of the other party, as if it was an invisible wall, until the tranquilizer gun lost all of its power and fell directly to the ground. Jimia subconsciously continued to fire. The tranquilizer gun fell to the ground, but the other party was unscathed. You? Who are you? The chairman of the pickets could not help but become frightened. I have said before, we can be considered acquaintances. If you don't believe me, you can come take a look for yourself. He turned around and lightly tapped his fingers on the office table. He said calmly, This contains your president's secret. Jimia was stunned. His throat moved subconsciously, but under the other party's gaze, he took a step forward. After taking the first step, Jimia gritted his teeth and quickly walked in front of the table. He lowered his head and looked down. What is this? Jimia instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. The entire table was shockingly a huge screen, and on the screen, there were actually many portraits of people. They were all teachers and students from the pilot school. His own portrait was also among them, and it had a red background. Here, there were only two kinds of backgrounds, blue and red. Most of them were red, and there were only a few blue ones. Counting them all, there were only about 40 to 50 of them. This is probably some kind of management system that manages the entire school, or even the entire second upper capital city, or even everyone in this world. Its voice was low. This is just one of the sub-interfaces. Management. Jimia's voice trembled. It said expressionlessly, maybe it is fate, but not necessarily. Through some kind of inducement, a certain kind of method is achieved. Why, Senior Jimia, don't options appear in front of you now? How can you? Jimia's expression instantly changed, and he looked at the other party in fear. He heard it say faintly, At first, I thought that only a few of us were special, and that options would appear. Only now did I realize that not only us, but everyone here has options. From the moment we stepped into this world, everyone is under control. It looked up at Jimia. Even if you die, you could be dug up again, like you. I'm already dead? Jimia's gaze was aghast, and he felt powerless all over. Although a wave of dizziness came over him, causing him to lose his footing, and he instantly collapsed onto the ground. At the same time, on the interface of the table, the red-framed avatar representing Jimia instantly flickered, and a notification of unknown error appeared. Madanzo looked at it silently. Jimia suddenly clutched his head, revealing an extremely pained expression. His body, at this moment, was like the light of a firefly, dissipating bit by bit, disappearing. The red-framed avatar that belonged to Jimia on the table instantly extinguished. Madanzo frowned. The next moment, Jimia's red-framed avatar on the table actually lit up again. At this moment, Jimia, who had originally disappeared, actually appeared completely again, at the position where he had disappeared, and he slowly opened his eyes. "Who are you?" Madanzo looked at the current Jimia and suddenly exploded with a slap to death. Jimia's body gradually disappeared again, and Jimia's avatar on the table also slowly extinguished at this moment, and then it lit up again. Jimia had started to appear again. Automatically generated, or Madanzo couldn't help but frown, but at this moment, Jimia, who had appeared again, seemed to be stuck and was only a faint shadow. And the shadow started to disappear. It should be automatically generated. This system is rather interesting. Madanzo's gaze instantly focused. The sound actually came from the chair in front of the table. Without her knowing when it had started, a black and white ragdoll bear was actually standing on this chair. And this ragdoll bear, standing on tiptoe, was pressing its claws on Jimia's avatar, and then directly swiping it away. "You!" Madanzo gaped. "That's right, it's me." However, Madanzo shook her head. "I'm asking, how can you control it? I've been here for a long time, and even smashed it with a hammer, but there was no reaction. All right, who are you again?" The black and white ragdoll bear blinked, then smiled and said, "Why you, who call yourself 11, don't know who I am? You're a newbie." Madanzo's expression couldn't help but change slightly. What the heck? Finally, was it going to be a showdown? End of chapter. Chapter 2272. You're a newbie. Star creation creatures. Metatro immediately stretched out his finger and pointed at the teddy bear, as if the murderer was you. The bear blinked its eyes and then let out a sinister laugh. "I've been found out. I knew it." Madanzo shook her head and walked closer. She frowned and said, "Why are you here? Where's your master?" "She was taken away," the ragdoll bear said helplessly. "Two men took her away while she was unconscious. You can see her from here." Madanzo said coldly and looked down at the screen on the table. Senior Yulia's avatar was in a blue frame, and it was not far from the school, but it was moving. Madanzo also saw the avatars of several other people on the moving avatar. There were a group of people with red frames, and only two of them had blue avatars. "This is Kay or Lily and Calvin?" Madanzo said thoughtfully. "This old man, what is he going to do this time?" The bear looked at Madanzo motionlessly. It looked no different from an ordinary doll. Madanzo felt uncomfortable, but she didn't point it out. Both of them had a tacit understanding and didn't point it out. "I wonder if you can show the options that these people are currently facing?" Madanzo asked suddenly. The bear suddenly stretched out its hands and patted the screen. In an instant, a large number of text appeared on the screen. "Only those with blue avatars have options?" Madanzo frowned again, and then her eyes moved slightly. "What are you doing?" The two hands of the ragdoll bear began to tap on the screen. At the same time, the content in the text box of Calvin's avatar began to change. "Save my master. I'm my master's star creation creatures." I don't believe it. However, all the options were indeed written by someone else. The president of the student council had been here all along, secretly editing everyone's options. At this time, the text on Calvin's profile picture had been completely rewritten through the editing of the ragdoll bear. "Hey, as the creator of Dark World Battlefront, you have been summoned by God. You should bring fear to the human world and destroy everything. You will open the door to a new world. Please put on your fishnet stockings and bring Yulia to the Summer Festival's venue. Once you're done, we'll begin the rest of the content. B. You've discovered the truth of the impact. You've been hiding in the horror behind the disaster for 3 years and 3 years. You've become the leader of the dark world battlefront. Everyone is looking at you. You don't know what to do. You're very anxious. If you don't close the net, you'll really merge into the darkness. You're very hesitant. Madanzo, was this guy really planning to save her? You don't have to choose and just leave it hanging. The ragdoll bear laughed sinisterly again. Madanzo squinted her eyes. It didn't even indicate what the reward was. This kind of choice was very careless. It would be strange if she chose it. Wait, they're really moving? In the direction of the school? The girl stood in front of the huge glass wall of the observation room. She was shocked and felt a huge chill. This is the messenger. Meshi's voice was slightly trembling. And it's the first messenger. Number 1. You know? Ludic's eyes flashed a trace of astonishment. Meshi was silent for a moment, as if she wanted to catch her breath. I've seen all the information about the impact disaster. I'm the pilot, so it's not difficult for me to see the top secret image. So, Principal Calvin wants Messenger 1. Ludic nodded. Meshi was suddenly furious. Why did he bury number 1 here? What does he want to do? He's actually feeding Envoy 1? Obviously, Meshi had already seen the corpses piled up under Messenger. I'm afraid he's a firm believer in the Messenger. Ludic sighed and said, the purpose of the Dark World battlefront is to come into contact with the world behind the Dark World. I think he's feeding this guy to open the door to the world behind the Dark World through it. But I don't know how to do it. After all, I only discovered this after this disaster. We can't let him get what he wants. Meshi took a deep breath and said, he has become a human spy. Yes, we can't let him get what he wants. Mr. Ludic sighed again. But if we don't agree with him, what do we have to face? Meshi's face suddenly changed slightly. She stared at Ludic. The second choice Calvin gave you is to bring me here. Obviously, it's not to let me know this. So, it's probably similar to what you think now, Mr. Ludic said faintly. Meshi subconsciously took 2 steps back and rushed out of the door. However, the iron door of the observation room closed instantly. Meshi turned around and saw Ludic walking slowly toward her. He pulled off a necklace from his neck and began to wrap it in his palm. Whether I hand you over to him or let me do it, your end will be the same. Ludic said expressionlessly at this time. Although your end will be the same, it will be different sooner or later. Later means that there may be changes. Meshi, I'm sorry. I can't joke with the lives of Yulia and Kair Lily. So you can only sacrifice me? Meshi sneered instantly. It doesn't matter what you think. Ludic said indifferently. I'm not a saint. I'm just a layman. There's a difference between friends and strangers. Compared to you guys, although that old bastard Calvin went overboard this time, he's still someone I truly know. I can only bet on him. Meshi took a deep breath and took the lead to attack. The girl could become an official pilot undoubtedly went through strict training. Her physical strength had long reached the limit of human. But what she had to face was extraordinary power far beyond human. The fist that clenched the necklace seemed to have half of the divine power. The girl's fighting ability, which she was proud of, was as fragile as paper in front of the divine power. Her body flew backward in an instant and smashed directly into the wall. Her body was seriously injured, and her internal organs seemed to be about to rupture. She spat out a mouthful of pus and blood. I'm sorry, but I also want to see if the door of the new world is the way to leave. Ludic sighed slowly, reached out, grabbed Meshi's arm, and dragged her to the end of the observation room. There was a special passage here, which was specially used to feed Messenger 1. The former Calvin probably pushed the food into such an abyss in this observation room. He didn't deserve to be called a scholar of the free city, but being an ascetic was an extreme profession. There was a demon living in Ludic's heart. To him, Calvin's cruelty was just that. The free city was no longer the free city of the past. Even the sage is fake. What are we? He silently put on the holy glory necklace again, took a deep breath, and then picked up Meshi expressionlessly and threw her into the feeding passage. Messenger, one in the observation room, was pale all over and looked more like a human. However, it was tied to the cross on the execution platform, like a suffering saint. But at this time, Ludwig's eyes suddenly narrowed. His arm that was about to throw Meshi out couldn't help but stop, because he saw a figure in the space where one was imprisoned. Black hair, black pupils, and black glasses. He was floating in front of the round hole on Messenger 1's neck. Ludwig's pupils suddenly shrank, and his heart was full of thoughts. Classmate. She opened her eyes reluctantly, and he was reflected in her eyes. As if he had heard the call, he, who was floating in front of Messenger 1, slowly turned around. He floated to the other side of the glass curtain wall of the observation room. They looked at each other through the thick glass curtain wall. Ludwig had unconsciously held the holy glory tightly again. At this time, Zhu slowly penetrated the glass curtain wall. For him, it was as simple as passing through the air. You are really 0. Ludwig took a deep breath. Zhu, in front of him, looked indifferent. His moving eyes slowly moved back and forth between Meshi and Ludwig. After a moment of silence, he said indifferently, "You can also use yourself." What? Ludwig was stunned, but he suddenly understood. His face changed slightly, because among the options that he ignored, there was indeed the option of throwing himself into the one emissary. Ludwig took a deep breath, and the place where he held the holy glory became more and more hot. He said seriously, "Zhu, as a teacher of the school, what I want to teach you now is human beings have always been selfish. This guy is the messenger of 0, the terrible guy who knocked down Song Lei in an instant. He can't be shaken by human strength," Ludwig shouted in his heart at this time, to the demon deep in his body, shouting angrily. In an instant, an extremely violent and crazy aura was emitted from Ludwig's body. Such madness and violence even made the solution soaked in Messenger 1 boil. The black illusory feather slowly unfolded behind Ludwig, but the place where he held the holy glory was shining more and more, as if he was maintaining a fragile balance. Selfish. Zhu looked at Ludwig silently and nodded slowly. "I understand." "Good." Ludwig stood up, and his voice became sharp. Zhu blinked and stretched out his hand. Ludwig, who was full of violent aura, was caught in his palm in an instant. He grabbed his neck. Ludwig's face instantly changed wildly. It was as if he had two faces, one of pain and the other of malevolence. In the end, the malevolent face seemed to triumph over the painful face, and it let out a roar. "I'm the king of hell. I don't know what hell is." Zhu shook his head. "But I don't like you. You can go in." Zhu waved his hand and directly threw Ludwig into the feeding channel. Ludwig was thrown into the solution in an instant. Like falling into the water, he instantly lost his balance and directly bumped into his envoy. Anger appeared on Ludwig's face, but he was soaked in the world of solution, so his voice couldn't come out. The illusory black wings behind him flapped crazily, but the round hole on envoy's neck suddenly shot out hundreds of black threads. Ludwig was instantly entangled by the black threads and dragged into this round hole little by little. Meshi looked at this weird scene in surprise, until a figure appeared in front of her and blocked what was happening at the end of the observation room. He gently picked her up and directly walked out of the observation room without looking at what happened behind him. "I remember. I'm here to take you away." "Leave?" Meshi's eyes gradually blurred, as if she was in a dream, where to the world of the living. Meshi subconsciously leaned on his chest. There was a feeling that made her addicted, but she didn't hear the sound of heartbeat. "Your Highness," in the unreal illusion, she seemed to see herself in the dream. "Wake up." The boy in the fox mask looked down. On the bench in the corner of the quiet campus courtyard, the silver-haired girl slowly opened her eyes and found herself lying on his lap. "How long?" the silver-haired girl asked blankly. "A while," he said with a smile. The silver-haired girl blinked, then turned around and buried her face directly in the belly of the boy in the fox mask, murmuring, "A while more." He didn't speak, just stroked the girl's hair. A small crack had appeared in the sky of second Shanjing. It was like a crack as long as a finger in his sight. He stopped stroking the girl's long hair, but covered the girl's ear with his palm. The screen was full of red lights, dozens, hundreds. The avatars in front began to flicker crazily, and the words, "unknown error," appeared one after another. "What did you do?" Madanzo couldn't help but exclaim. She really didn't know what this ragdoll bear did to make the screen on the table twitch crazily. A strange scene was playing out in the office of the student council president. Chairman Jimia was currently repeating the cycle of appearing, disappearing, reappearing, and disappearing again. Every time he appeared, Jimia's attire and demeanor would be slightly different, as though he had countless faces. Not only that, on the screen, more than half of the avatars would disappear, and hundreds of new avatars would appear. Facing this strange scene, the ragdoll bear was like a naughty child who didn't know what to do after making a mistake, leaning back on the chair. "I didn't do anything." Chapter 2273. You're awake. What a surprise. In the darkness, Yulia raised her head. She was surrounded by flashing screens that formed a huge wall. An old man stood in front of her. The old man was wearing a black robe and holding a walking stick. "You are Principal Calvin?" Yulia was stunned. In her mind, Principal Calvin of the driver's school should have disappeared during the last impact disaster. She speculated that Principal Calvin might have been killed. How could he be here? Where is this place? Principal Calvin shook his head. "It seems that you've been assimilated. There's nothing to say." Yulia subconsciously moved her hands and found that she was fixed on a metal frame in the shape of a cross. She was shocked. She saw that the screen that formed the wall was showing everything that happened in the driver's school. From every angle, everything was available. What made her even more shocked was that she found that she was not the only one beside her. There were rows of metal crosses here, and many young boys and girls were locked on these crosses. They were all wearing the uniform of the driver's school. Is that Kate or Lily? Among the rows of metal crosses, Yulia saw Kay or Lily, who had been missing for a long time, the former driver of Songlei. At this time, Kay or Lily was in the middle of many metal crosses. How is it? This is the result of my many years of hard work. Calvin staggered over with his walking stick. I've been in this world for a long time, since the first impact. Maybe he just wanted to find someone to talk to. For him at this time, Yulia in front of him was obviously the only choice. He actually preferred the person standing in front of him at this time to be Ludic, one of the only two students he valued. However, Ludic had some secrets that even he had never thought of. It was completely out of his expectations. I created Dark World Battlefront from the very beginning. I traveled back and forth between the world of this page and the free city. Here, time could be shaped. Kerrigan is a stupid woman who only knows how to use brute force. She doesn't know how to use Book of Gaia at all. Yulia was stunned. She had no idea what the principal of the driver's school in front of her was talking about. The only thing she was sure of was that the old man's mind was somewhat unstable. All the pages will evolve on their own. The beginning of the world, or even the beginning of civilization. Do you know what this means? Calvin's eyes blazing. This means that time here is usable. As long as you plant a seed at the beginning of the world, you can harvest in the future. Do you understand? Do you understand? Yulia's face turned pale, and she desperately shrank her neck. When the principal spoke, he actually spat out saliva. Any knowledge, any idea, as long as you find the right world, as long as you put it in the beginning of the right world, it will go through a long period of evolution and evolution. The people of the whole world will gather their strength to perfect this. Help me. Calvin suddenly pinched Yulia's chin with one hand. Soon, you will see the results of the experiment. Become a part of it. What do you want to do? She said in a trembling voice. At this time, Calvin picked up the silver ornament on the cane. There was a button inside. He chuckled and directly pressed the button. In an instant, the whole space became transparent. Pure white. From the top, helmets suddenly fell down and accurately put on the heads of the boys and girls chained to the metal crosses. At this time, a helmet also slowly fell on Yulia's head. Your consciousness will be gathered and used by me. From now on, I will have real power. After the helmet was put on, Yulia's consciousness was sucked into a strange space. Soon, she saw a huge body. It was a huge body that seemed to belong to her, but at the same time, it wasn't her. "Wake up, the giant beast of the end." Calvin slowly exhaled, and then put on a helmet for himself. "Look, what's that?" The sky instantly darkened, and the lively campus quieted down. Then there was a tremor, the earth was shaking, and the air was shaking. At this time, the alarm of second Shangjing was instantly blaring. Not good, it's an impact. This city hadn't recovered from the pain, but a new round of disaster quietly arrived. At this time, the campus was dead silent. Then there was a loud bang. Amidst the buzzing that resounded throughout the city, a huge creature floated over from afar. It was pitch black, covered in scales, had multiple heads and many tails. It was like a mutated creature. Ugly. This is, in the office of the student union's picket team, Vice President Millet looked at the huge creature that was slowly floating over in disbelief. She subconsciously stepped back and bumped into the table. The giant beast of the end has finally succeeded. The door to a new world is about to open. Teacher Muzi's voice sounded in the room. Everyone looked at her, only to see this blonde beauty suddenly rushing to the windowsill. "Stop her!" Millet screamed in shock. Unfortunately, it was too late. This blonde beauty had directly smashed through the glass and jumped out of the office building. Millet looked over and saw a staggering figure on the ground rushing into the panicked crowd, and in the blink of an eye, she was nowhere to be seen. She couldn't contact Chairman Jamia, president. She couldn't contact him, and even the acting principal couldn't be contacted. Millet gritted her teeth and picked up the communicator. "This is Millet. Everyone listen up. Get to your positions immediately. This isn't a drill. This is a real battle. I repeat, this isn't a drill. This is a real battle." In an instant, emergency passageways were opened all over the campus. They led underground. The pilot school was also a base. In some ways, it was even more complete than the destroyed second Shangjing base. The field was emptied, and cannons began to rise. The water in the swimming pool was also crazily pumped dry, and a large number of anti-air cannons emerged. The teaching building began to move, and all the windows fell down. More weapons were released from the pillars of the building. Wow. When I was young, I had thought about how cool it would be if the school I hated could be used for battle. The students here are so cool. In the student union president's office, the black and white teddy bear looked at the changes in the entire school with shining eyes, like a naughty child seeing a 20-meter-tall battle robot. Madanzo couldn't help but roll her eyes. She had already felt that things were going to be bad when all the screens on the table turned red and showed the unknown error, but she didn't expect it to be an attack. "But why does this emissary look like a Stitch monster? I feel it." The teddy bear waved its hand and pointed at the behemoth floating quickly. "My master is there." "Are you sure?" Madanzo frowned subconsciously. In essence, she didn't do her best. This thing was really Yulia's star creation creature, but this thing definitely had something to do with Yulia. "I swear on my master's integrity," the black and white teddy bear said solemnly. Madanzo fell silent. In theory, newcomers didn't have any integrity. After so many page worlds, it knew very well what kind of person Yulia was. "I see." Madanzo sighed slowly. "I'll go and take a look." With that, the 6 wings on the little boy's back spread open, and he instantly broke out of the window. The black and white ragdoll bear looked at him and clenched its little fists. "Light Clan. I wonder if he's really from the Light Clan. Anyway, do your best. Brave boy. Go and create a miracle." It then walked to the place where Madanzo broke out of the window, but instead of jumping down, it climbed up. The ear-piercing sound finally woke her up from the dream. The moment Madanzo opened her eyes, the sky changed color. However, with Juju by her side, she felt a strange sense of security. Even if she was facing all these sudden changes, she seemed to be able to accept it. "Juji?" He raised his head and looked at the changed sky, as if it had been a long time. The girl's call brought him back to reality. He looked at Madanzo and said in his usual tone, "Did I wake you up? Or rather, shouldn't I wake up?" Madanzo smiled bitterly. At this time, Zhu Ji was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "You don't need to care about the rebirth here. This place doesn't belong to you." Madanzo frowned and said subconsciously, In the dream, I seem to I can't give you too many answers." Zhu Ji shook his head. "There are some things that I can't remember. I just remember some things that I need to do. The original intention of coming to this world. What is it? To take you away." Zhu Ji was silent for a while. Then he said, "And take her away." "Leave to where?" Madanzo looked around blankly. She had been living here for a long time. She shook her head and stood up. The part of her body that was hurt by Principal Ludwig's substitute was still aching. "Sorry, I can't leave. Impact, I can't ignore it." A pilot had a mission. It was a kind of creed that had been engraved in the deepest part of her soul from the moment she boarded Calit. Zhu didn't say anything at this time, just looked at Madanzo silently. "Okay, you go." Madanzo was stunned, a little surprised. "You don't object?" "No, I don't object." Zhu shook his head. "As long as it's your wish, there's no problem because I still have time. Go." Madanzo opened her mouth, but her expression changed slightly in an instant. Because she heard Kurlit's call. It was the resonance between the pilot and the God-Eater. However, Kaelat should have been completely paralyzed after the previous impact. But this time, she actually saw Kurlit. Like the most loyal knight, a strong light was cast from the sky in the huge playground, and the familiar Kurlit appeared in front of her, half kneeling. How could it be? A gentle invisible force lifted Madanzo and sent her directly to the door of Kurlit's cockpit. Madanzo subconsciously boarded the cockpit and looked back. On the rooftop of the campus, the black-haired boy was looking at her with gentle eyes. "Since this is your wish, it's up to you to solve it. No matter what the result is, since you've made your choice, I'll just watch until the end." Madanzo took a deep breath and sat directly in the familiar cockpit. On the rooftop, Zhu Ji stood in the wind, but his eyes suddenly moved and looked at the fence. A furry guy was climbing out from the other side of the fence. It was a black and white ragdoll bear. The moment they looked at each other, the ragdoll bear took the lead to greet him. "Hi, brother, long time no see." Zhu frowned slightly. He didn't have many emotions, but he seemed to be born with disdain. Inexplicably, he felt a little disdainful toward this talking teddy bear. "I don't know you," Zhu said indifferently. "But I know you." The ragdoll bear climbed over the fence and jumped directly to the ground, saying with a smile, "We're brothers." "Brothers?" Zhu frowned and pondered. Then he shook his head and said, "I'm not." The ragdoll bear seemed to be greatly hurt. He sighed and said, "Don't you want to know why you're here?" "Why I'm here?" The ragdoll bear said, "I don't know the details, but according to my recent observations, you should have used the passage of the Nirvana Ocean to enter this world. That's really your style. For Gaia, you didn't hesitate to become an abomination and enter this world after death." Zhu remained silent. The ragdoll bear slowly walked over, and the smile on his face deepened. "This is the world after death. It's the only reincarnation place that can resist fate. Actually, have you ever thought about why the one who awakened reincarnation is Gaia and not you?" Zhu still remained silent. In the end, the ragdoll bear walked to Zhu and looked up. "Fate isn't omnipotent. Every power has two sides. Without reincarnation, no matter how strong fate is, it won't be able to stand up. Do you understand now? Sister Huang Anji gave up Gloria's son in the beginning because she wanted you to be stronger. Gaia, it's probably the same, right? Brother, you really are a sinful person. Have you ever felt pain for your own existence on a lonely night?" Zhu suddenly moved. He lifted the ragdoll bear with one hand. "Although I don't know what you're trying to say," Zhu said expressionlessly, "but I have a feeling that you're trying to sow discord. You give me a very bad feeling." "Huh?" The ragdoll bear couldn't help but blink. "Wait, I still have something to say, wait." Zhu had already torn the ragdoll bear in half and threw it on the ground. Chapter 2274. Its name was the Doomsday Behemoth. Calvin had not always been influenced by the choices of this world. What he wanted to do was to think about how to steal the power that truly belonged to him from the page world. In theory, everything in the Book of Gaia should be able to manifest in reality. This was a secret that even Kerrigan had not discovered, but he had discovered it. To Calvin, resurrecting and evolving emissary number 1 was like a bright line in this world. It was an option given by the page world, but the Doomsday Behemoth was his real reward. It was what he had been secretly plotting. Hence, the organization that he had founded was named the Dark World Battlefront. The true form of the emissary that brings power to this world is the void primordial demon in the dimensional void. I want to turn the Doomsday Behemoth into a real void Shura. With the void Shura, I can control all the void primordial demons in the dimensional void. I will have the power to destroy the kingdom of heaven. What he thought and what he did would be verified on this day in the page world. Harvest to your heart's content, Doomsday Behemoth. The mountain-like behemoth had appeared in the sky above the pilot school. This terrifying monster that was far more powerful than any of the emissaries before had brought death and despair. In front of the Doomsday Behemoth, human weapons could only play a local role in disrupting the emissary. They could not be shot down at all. At this time, even if the pilot school had brought out all the weapons and the frightened students had taken their positions, they still had no confidence in defeating the behemoth. The second upper capital had just experienced a devastating calamity. This was supposed to be a summer festival, but now it had become a celebration of despair and death. When the Doomsday Behemoth floated over, it stirred up a strong wind that blew away the celebration decorations in the school. Now, the behemoth with many heads and tails had finally revealed its fangs. Don't give up. Keep shooting. Even if you can't defeat it, don't let this monster have an easy time. The voice of the vice chairman of the picket team rang out from every post, and he shouted at the top of his lungs to encourage the students who were scared out of their wits. Even Millet herself knew that this was a battle where the difference in strength was too great, and she had no chance of winning. But at this moment, a streak of light shot through the air and crashed into the emissary force field of the Doomsday Behemoth. It's Curlet. It's Curlet. Curlet. Millet could not help falling into a daze as she stared at the body that was resisting the apocalypse behemoth's force field with both hands. There would always be someone willing to step forward when humans were in despair. Curlet, the pilot of Curlet, Meshi, was now carrying everyone's hope. We can't let her fight alone, Miss Millet. From now on, you are in charge of commanding the school basis support. Vice Chairman, could it be that you want it? I am also a reserve pilot. The collision between the force field and the repulsive force field caused a firework-like radiance to appear in the sky. What was the girl in the cockpit feeling right now? Passion, determination, or perhaps fear? So beautiful. Even though the entire pilot school was fully armed, in the small courtyard between the buildings, everything seemed to be very far away. The boy with the fox mask and the girl with the silver hair. It was as if they were in a painting. Quiet. He lowered his head and looked at the girl with the silver hair, who was unwilling to wake up. His finger could not help but stroke her pale cheeks. At the same time, a golden page appeared in his other hand. This is what you wrote down, but it might not. It might not be something that truly happened in the past. He muttered. The truth behind the page world had already quietly entered his line of sight. The dazzling radiance in the sky had already turned into simple black and simple white in his field of vision. The world after death. It seems like it's just a transfer point to the origin. In the Wraith realm, Lilia had already come into contact with it once. Here, at this time, it should be the second time. Then, did you really come here after you died? The girl with the silver hair did not seem to hear these questions. She slept peacefully, her small mouth slightly opened, exhaling a warm breath. Forget it. He shook his head. Let's go with your ending. It's time to catch that naughty brat. As he spoke, he, who was wearing the fox mask, reached out his hand. More than half of his palm disappeared in an instant, as if it had entered another space. Rooftop. The airflow from the collision of the force fields had already blown away the torn half of the ragdoll bear's body. No one knew where it had been blown to, but the ragdoll bear with only half of its white body was still trying its best to get up at this moment. To be precise, it was lifting half of its body horizontally. I'm not dead yet, are you surprised? Are you surprised? Student Zhu's eyes narrowed. His fingers moved slightly, and hundreds of tiny beams of light shot out from his fingertips, riddling the remaining half of the bear's body with thousands of holes. However, it stubbornly did not die. Seeing this, Student Zhu was not angry. He simply flipped his hand, and a blazing flame appeared in the center of his palm. It burned until nothing was left. This weird bear would probably not be able to speak anymore. Wait, this is not fun, the bear suddenly exclaimed. It's true. I mean you no harm. You have to believe me. I just want to tell you the truth. The flame did not dissipate, but it did not fall either. Student Zhu tilted his head and said indifferently, "What truth?" The bear's remaining eye blinked at this time. At this moment, there was only one thought in its mind, a rather crazy thought. It wanted to do something. It wanted to self-destruct the information it had dug out from senior sister, Yulia. It wanted to see what would happen after telling this to Zhu. Would Zhu collapse? Or listen, whether it's you or me, we're just... The bear's voice slowly sounded, even a little trembling. It was extremely excited because it was about to witness the truth. But at this time, Zhu suddenly frowned. A palm that appeared out of thin air suddenly appeared at this time. And the moment it appeared, it directly grabbed the half of the bear's tattered body. Zhu's eyes narrowed, and he subconsciously reached out to grab it, but it was too late. Only faint ripples were left in the space in front of him, and then it disappeared as if nothing had happened. Zhu froze on the spot, looking at his palm blankly, as if he felt that it was unbelievable that someone could snatch something from his hand. Listen, whether it's you or me, we're just... The voice stopped here, and the bear suddenly opened its eyes wide. What reflected in its eyes was a fox mask. That's all it is. The boy with the fox mask said with a slightly low voice, "Why don't you continue? I want to hear it." The bear, Prince Huang, said blankly at this time, "Brother? No, Crown. Crown Prince? No. No, who are you? Haven't you always wanted to know the secrets you dug out from Nan Xiaonan's heart? Who's her boss? I'm her boss. You?" Prince Huang instantly grabbed half of his head in pain. I don't understand this time. I don't understand." He almost roared. The boy with the fox mask stretched out his hand and gently tapped on the head of the bear. Prince Huang gradually calmed down. After calming down, he couldn't help but panic. Just now, the one who almost collapsed was obviously himself. "You're not the real Huang. Although Book of Gaia has tried its best to perfect your existence, but..." The boy with the fox mask seemed to sigh. "You can't really accommodate the will of Huang." "Impossible. I'm Dark Moon. It's just the moon in the book." The boy with the fox mask shook his head. "Just like Zhu, just like others, they can't really touch me. And I can't descend on them. Once it happens, Book of Gaia can only completely collapse. I want to go out. I want to go out." The tattered ragdoll bear's body actually slowly floated up, and a strange power gradually emerged from its body. It was like the dark side of the moon, where the eternal darkness was. The surrounding space began to distort, and a small black hole appeared behind it and began to spread. This is also the power given to you by Book of Gaia. I'm afraid it's still far from the real Dark Moon. The boy with the fox mask sighed and stretched out his hand. The spreading black hole was instantly annihilated, and the broken bear collapsed to the ground powerlessly. "Your guess is correct," he said casually. "Whether it's the destiny power of Glorious Sun, in the Holy Land World's royal family power, or the ability of your Dark Moon, the power that should be in the concept is indeed far from this. But you, after all, are only a person in the book. Even if you really take advantage of the loophole and walk out of the book, the real you will immediately appear in front of you and directly erase you. Right?" It was silent and muddle-headed. "You should know that if it's you, you will immediately erase yourself from the book. I don't want to have a good conversation. Goodbye." The boy with the fox mask sighed. As he sighed, the bear slowly lost its vitality In the end, it laid on the ground. Now, it was just an ordinary doll that was completely broken. The smuggling plan of the doll, Famine, was declared a failure. It seems that Famine only left a fragment of its consciousness in the Wraith realm. If there were more, it would probably cause the Book of Gaia to lose its balance. He muttered to himself. However, if it's already so mischievous in the book, the real person is probably something else. Although he only saw it from the book. But he was able to use this opportunity to observe them. Famine, Princess Angelique, Great Emperor Califar, those who were related to him in countless ways, his past family members. However, the matter of concubine selection isn't it a bit. Even though he was someone who was indifferent to life and death, he couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of person he was in the past. After a while, he looked up at the small crack in the sky that was only the size of a finger. Due to the appearance of the behemoth of Apocalypse, this small crack had never been noticed before. Speed up. Holding the golden page in his hand, he muttered. In the blink of an eye, that small crack tore a huge hole in the sky. What did that look like? It looked like a piece of white paper was torn apart. She couldn't stop the behemoth from descending. Not only that, Curlet's arms were already trembling and cracking. Meshi clenched her teeth. The pilot had to synchronize with the god Eater, so all of their senses would be synchronized. Curlet's arms had exploded, which meant that she was also enduring the pain of her arms exploding. Give up resisting. I will lead all of humanity into the gate of a new world. On the other side of the gate, there is an endless world waiting to be conquered. Become my believer, Meshi. I will become the god of the new world. This voice is Principal Calvin. The behemoth of Apocalypse sank instantly, and Curlet's arms had reached their limit. The girl in the cockpit was pale, but she clenched her teeth, and her teeth were bleeding. Don't give up. A pushing force suddenly appeared behind Curlet. It was Songlei from the Second Upper Capital Driving School. You are Miss Miley? Songlei appeared, and its body was still connected to the power cable used by the base. In the cockpit of Songlei, the girl from the Student Union's picket team had no color on her face. It was as if taking a breath would exhaust all her strength. She was about to speak when she coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. Miley, you haven't logged in as an official pilot. You will die. It's too late, and I don't have the authority, but... The girl in Songlei's cockpit clenched the control stick tightly, but, just like what you said, we might have fought like this before. In an instant, a pair of blood-red wings appeared on Songlei's back. I can't hold on for long. Don't let my efforts go to waste. I looked forward to the president, and I looked forward to you. Now, I am also... The girl piloted Songlei and pushed Curlet, roaring and breaking through the force field of the behemoth of Apocalypse. The behemoth's descent stopped. Humph! I didn't have time to remove the new system from Songlei's body, but inside the behemoth of Apocalypse, Calvin looked indifferently at Songlei, who was bursting with power without any panic. The power of the behemoth of Apocalypse had not been fully released. This was the ultimate creature he used to fight against Kingdom of Heaven, and it could evolve continuously. Its potential had not been tapped out, and its power was far from its peak. Release 20% power limit. Calvin calmly issued the order. Behind him, the instant he issued the order, the bodies of the young men and women on the metal crosses that were erected immediately twitched a little and let out waves of mournful cries. But to Calvin, the wailing sound was like gospel. The power of the behemoth of Apocalypse began to increase, and he was almost drowned in this huge increase in power. It was at this time that a smiling face appeared in front of Calvin's eyes. It was the smiling face of a young, innocent boy. It's you? The little boy had 6 illusory wings behind his back. His fingers gently tapped on Calvin's body, and Calvin instantly flew backward. You old man, it's really hard to find you? The little boy swung his arms, and the smile on his face grew wider. You really think you're invincible just because you got a stitched monster? It's you. Calvin instantly let out a cry of surprise. He would never forget how this guy had broken his limbs back in the observation room of the underground base of the pilot school. The horror of the little boy had long been deeply imprinted in Calvin's heart. It was even more terrifying than Ludwig's demonized appearance. What do you want to do this time? Calvin's voice was no longer calm. What do I want to do? I can't just watch two girls fight with their lives on the line without doing anything. Besides, one of them is my roommate for 1 month. The little boy, Madanzo, narrowed her eyes. Besides, thank you for taking care of my Yulia. Calvin gritted his teeth, and a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes. At this moment, Madanzo couldn't help but widen her eyes. She saw Calvin get up. The moment he got up, a corner of the old man's black robe was lifted up. F***CK. You really wore it? Madanzo took a deep breath and said in shock, It's A. You really chose A. Confusing behavior. Chapter 2275. It's option A. You chose option A. How did you know? Exclamations and exclamations. The former was shock, while the latter was fear. Calvin was the one who was frightened at this time. According to his observation and research, the options in the world should be completely private. Even if two people who both had options were facing each other, they wouldn't know what choice the other was making. But his option was actually known. He had been dormant in this page world for a long time, but he still hadn't found a way to peek into the truth behind the options. If I said that not only did I know, but I even saw with my own eyes that there was a guy who wrote the option for you this time, would you believe me? Impossible. Calvin was filled with grief and indignation. Option A. Option A. When it appeared, this revived outer god, who was once a great scholar in the City of Freedom, refused at that time. But he had a reason to choose option A. Because of guidance. Because option A was leading him to open the door to a new world, to open the door to this page world, to open the door that could manifest the power of this page world to the outside world. Therefore, not to mention a pair of broken socks. Even if there were two pairs, he wouldn't hesitate. But the premise was that no one knew. The option was completely private, so no one would know at all. This was a perfect closed loop. But now, Calvin couldn't help but feel that his heroic reputation had been ruined, forcing him to feel that he had no choice but to destroy this hateful youth in front of him. Nothing is impossible, Madanzo sighed slowly. For example, if I'm standing here, do you think it's possible? No matter who you are, you have to die today. Calvin had basically lost his most basic sense of reason at this moment. The little youth sighed again, suddenly showing a smile, and said softly, Calvin, no, the legendary mage of the Celts, look at me. Look at me seriously, I look a little like the past. In an instant, the void lit up, and the wings behind the little youth bloomed like flowers. A phantom appeared behind Madanzo, 36 wings of pure white. Metatron, how? Calvin seemed to have lost all his strength in an instant. He fell to the ground with a blank expression on his face. At this moment, the little boy was walking towards him one step at a time, walking towards this outer god reincarnated whose mental defenses had been completely broken and who had lost all will to resist. Madanzo reached out and grabbed Calvin's head. She sneered and said, Don't worry. I will deal with all of you one by one. Now let's start with you. The pure white 36 wings were completely dyed pure black in an instant. It hadn't forgotten, it wouldn't forget, and it would never forget. In that broken orphanage dormitory, there was a young girl who would rather give up her own beliefs to believe in him. It would never forget the feeling of helplessness and despair when facing such a young girl, when it couldn't save her. She had made it feel despair. Even those guys from the Blazing Sky Palace had not done so. Serene, the girl who truly possessed a compassionate heart. At this moment, Calvin's head, in her palm, was now like dried and cracked mud. He watched as his head split open. A crack split open between his eyebrows, and then the left and right sides of his face were slashed open. The wail from the soul resounded throughout the huge room, full of metal crosses. Calvin's face gradually distorted under Madanzo's palm, like an evil spirit. Feel the taste of a slow death. Bang, 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 bang. The helmets, one after another, 2, 3, exploded crazily. The young boys and girls who were imprisoned here like nourishment broke free from a huge cage and regained their freedom from the body of the apocalypse behemoth. The entire control room flashed with a dangerous buzzing sound at this time. In the crowd, a figure was the first to get up. She was Yulia. Yulia looked around in a daze. She suddenly slapped the back of her head hard. Memories flooded in like a tide. Yulia's memories. Senior Yulia's memories. Her own memories. What the hell? While at a loss, Senior Yulia gradually sorted out her thoughts. But at this time, she saw a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. She saw Calvin. Calvin, who was like a real person after being eaten by insects, had thousands of holes in his body. He stood there, but his body was being wiped away bit by bit, irregularly. However, there was actually a strange, satisfied smile on his face, as if he was on a pilgrimage. The look in his eyes was no longer his own. They disappeared bit by bit, his limbs, his body, and then his chest. His neck also disappeared, and his smile was still satisfied. His mouth disappeared, and not even ashes were left. His eyes were still full of smiles. His nose, his ears, his hair. In the end, only his eyes remained in the air. The left eyeball also began to disappear. As for the right eyeball, there was no longer any trace of Calvin's appearance. The right eyeball had also disappeared, turning into a wisp of fine foam, truly obliterated. Senior Yulia shuddered in an instant, and she stood up abruptly. There seemed to be a trace of Senior 11th's aura left here. A terrifying aura. While looking around blankly, a huge hand that was extremely worn out suddenly pierced through the wall that was full of screens and appeared in front of Senior Yulia. Then, another huge hand that was similarly worn out appeared. The two hands began to exert strength, and bit by bit, the wall in front of them was opened. At this time, Senior Yulia seemed to see a huge halo. In the halo, there was Kurlit's figure and Meshi's voice. Yulia. The light of the halo instantly shone in. The boys and girls who fainted on the ground slowly opened their eyes under the light. In the sky, the final behemoth slowly fell. As it fell, its body rapidly disintegrating into all kinds of wreckage. It had lost any vitality. In the center of its body, there was a huge wound that was forcefully blasted out. For some reason, the terrifying giant beast of the apocalypse suddenly stopped all operations, and it didn't even activate its force field. The two girls who drove the God-Eater accurately seized the only opportunity in despair and successfully destroyed the body of the giant beast of the apocalypse. In the school's auditorium, Sanlei was sitting on the ground. Its cockpit had been opened. More than a dozen students carefully carried out Millie, who was soaked in blood and had almost lost her breath. Millie was in a deep coma. Hurry, send her to the medical room. She's still breathing. Hurry. The pilot knocked down the messenger. Their mission has been completed, and it was completed very well. Now, it's the mission of our medical team. We must save her. There were no cheers, only silent and hurried figures. In the base of the pilot school, on various posts, the students who were all tense leaned back in their chairs, quietly looking at the screen and listening to the report in the communication channel. All of this was not easy to come by. Hurry, more people. There are a lot of injured people here who need treatment. Amongst the scattered remains of the behemoth of Doomsday, Kayla was using its own body to hold up a huge piece of wreckage, and beneath it were the youths rescued from the depths of the behemoth of Doomsday's body. These boys and girls who woke up were obviously unfamiliar with everything and didn't know what to do, passively accepting everything in front of them with pale faces. Among them, a girl draped in a thin white blanket walked aimlessly. She didn't seem to know what to do and just walked instinctively. Kate or Lily. At this moment, a voice stopped the girl draped in a thin white blanket. The girl turned around subconsciously. Miss Yulia. At a corner of the school's rooftop, the little boy slowly landed. When he landed, he actually saw Zhu standing on the rooftop. Landing. Metatro heaved a sigh of relief. He tilted his head and looked at Zhu. Did you happen to be here? Or did I happen to meet you? Zhu, my friend. Is there a difference? Zhu shook his head. I've just been here all along. Madanzo looked around, and then said, "There's indeed no difference. Are you looking for this?" Zhu slowly reached out its hand, and on its palm was a furry ear, like a doll's ear, and it was black. "You don't have to look for it now." Madanzo shook her head. She didn't know if anything had happened between the weird and mysterious bear doll and Zhu. But now, it seemed that the bear doll, which had been manipulating all the time, was probably dead. "What should I call you?" Zhu suddenly asked. Madanzo showed a faint smile. "What should I call you here?" Zhu nodded thoughtfully and then smiled. "Nice to meet you, Shinji classmate." This guy actually smiled. Madanzo couldn't help but feel a little surprised. From the very beginning, she had been trying to gain this guy's affection. She didn't know how much it had improved, but this was the first time she saw this guy smile. And it was even F*King good looking. "You're leaving?" She vaguely felt something. Zhu shook his head, then looked at the sky and said slowly, "It's them. They found me." "They?" Madanzo was startled and raised her head subconsciously. A crack appeared, like tearing a piece of white paper. A huge crack that tore the whole sky appeared in an instant. In that crack, there were countless vortexes and countless figures of messengers. They were struggling and pushing each other, as if they couldn't wait and wanted to rush out of the crack. They even started to kill each other in the crack. So many. Metatro couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air when he saw what was behind the crack. These messengers were original void demons in the first place. Metatro had never seen so many original void demons at once. It had indeed annihilated countless original void demons, but that was a prime number accumulated over a long period of time. A terrifying fissure split the skies of the entire world, and within that fissure were endless primordial demons of the void. Even if there were only half of them, wouldn't they be able to easily destroy the kingdom of heaven from the dimensional void to the end? "You're saying that they're looking for you?" Madanzo looked at Zhu with a serious expression and vaguely understood something. "I don't remember." Zhu shook his head. "But it should be like this. Maybe it's because I've done something. Before coming here, I've been avoiding these guys. Why are they looking for you? You should be messengers." But Madanzo didn't say it out loud. "To eat me," Zhu said faintly. "And then, most likely, to eat everything here. Remember it." All of a sudden, Metatro rushed to Zhu excitedly and grabbed its arm subconsciously. She felt that she might have touched on some kind of truth about the primordial. In Zhu's words, "If possible, I also hope to remember more." Zhu slowly pushed away Madanzo's hand. "But I have a feeling that maybe this is all I know." "Shinji, I'm sorry, I don't seem to have time." Zhu's body rushed up into the sky in an instant. The huge updraft caused Metatro's hair to become disheveled. He did not intend to give up on his questions. However, at this moment, an ominous feeling came from the depths of the driver's school. It was some kind of voice, a voice like the cry of the soul. "This feeling is void ancestor." Madanzo's face changed dramatically, thinking of Messenger 1 in the underground observation room. "No, it's not void ancestor. This is void Azura. Who fed it? And who fed it?" In an instant, a huge question arose in Madanzo's heart. In theory, there should be only two options to promote the final evolution of Messenger 1. If it wasn't him, then it would be Meishi. However, Meishi was still in the cockpit of Kurlit at this time. Crack. The whole pilot school building broke into two halves at this moment. In the collapsed building, a pale, muscular arm suddenly appeared, and then the palm tightly grasped the tilted part of the roof. Void! Azura! At this time, Madanzo had left the broken building and distanced herself from it. She looked at the pale arm with a pale face. The terrible thing under the pilot school came out. At the same time, Madanzo also knew who fed Messenger. In the center of Messenger 1's head, a figure merged with it. It was Ludic. Chapter 2276. Upon closer inspection, Ludic and 1 were closely connected. In other words, it was not an exaggeration to say that they had completely merged into one entity. He seemed to have lost his life and was just like a part of Messenger, West's body, just the part that was exposed from the forehead. Messenger, one, which had completely crawled out of the underground base of the driver's school, looked more like a human than when Madanzo had first seen it. It was thin, but its legs were disproportionately long, like a primate. However, it had no facial features, and its entire head was like a mask with nothing on it. At this time, Messenger One's huge body directly squatted on the slanted rooftop of the teaching building. Its hands were naturally put down, and its head was raised, facing the huge crack in the sky. How can this be? Ludic actually. Madanzo looked at this scene in disbelief. It had never thought that Ludic would be swallowed by Messenger. No, it wasn't Ludic. It should be the guy in Ludic's body. It should be Samuel, who completed Messenger One in the end. Madanzo took a deep breath, and then a sense of powerlessness followed. Looking at the pale Messenger One that had completed its evolution, it deeply felt that fate seemed to be playing tricks on it. However, no matter what, Ludic is a descendant of a saint's family. If that person knows about it, I'm afraid. No, it's just a saint's family, not a real direct descendant related to that person. After all, Joan of Arc was still a virgin until her death. Senior. At this moment, a voice that was very familiar to Madanzo sounded. It looked down and saw Senior's sister, Yulia, coming to it with tears and snot. Metatro almost fell for such an accurate outpouring of emotions. Senior, I miss you so much. You're just in time. Madanzo reached out and pressed down on Senior Yulia's head so that she wouldn't come over. Do you see those void original demons in the crack? Senior's sister, Yulia's expression instantly changed, and she nodded. That was the reason why she had hurriedly come here. At this time, Madanzo quickly said, Listen, this world has developed to this extent, but the pages have not appeared yet. Senior, what do you mean? Madanzo said seriously, I'm afraid this is the real battle. Newcomer, place your bets. Are we betting that this world will be completely destroyed by the primordial void devil, or that this page world can survive this crisis? Senior, you also know that my luck hasn't been very good recently, right? Yulia couldn't help but say faintly. I know, Madanzo said bluntly. That's why I want you to choose. Whatever you bet on, I'll bet the opposite. You F***er. Do you really think I'm a beacon? Come on, newbie, it's time for you to show off. Place your bets. Yulia opened her mouth, suddenly feeling a little nervous. Which side should she bet on? No matter how one looked at it, this hand of cards was the trump card of the primordial void devil. On the other hand, on the human side, second upper capital city didn't have the slightest bit of defense. Even if it did, it wouldn't be able to withstand the endless primordial void devils. Furthermore, Miley was almost, or perhaps already dead. Songlei was crippled, and as for Kurlit, it was questionable whether he still had any combat power. The primordial void devil was a real dragon riding on the face, and even the poison healer didn't seem to lose. There was still one on the ground. Senior, could this be that primordial void ancestor hidden under the school? It's Void Azura now, and it has successfully evolved after swallowing Ludic. Ludic, Yulia gasped. How could this be? Senior, could it be that you fed it? I want to know. Madanzo rolled her eyes. Then Yulia's eyes darted around again. Suddenly, she saw something, and her eyes lit up. Who's that? Zhu? What's he doing? Madanzo suddenly said, Newbie, I'll give you a piece of information for free. This time, Zhu and the primordial void devil seemed to be enemies. She knew which side to bet on. She would be able to make a living if she followed the boss. Even if the boss was just a projection, he was still the boss. Songlei, Yulia suddenly yelled in a deep voice. On the ground, the dilapidated huge machine that was sitting beside the school auditorium suddenly flashed with a red light and stood up once again. It can still move? Madanzo blinked in surprise. Yulia said with a hint of pride in her voice, My star creation creature can move even if it only has one finger left. So what's your choice? Do it, of course. Yulia took a deep breath. With her hands on her hips, she looked at the endless primordial void devil that covered the entire sky without any fear. Damn it, these are all experience materials to upgrade the Black Soul body. With so many primordial void devils, to what extent could she upgrade to? She didn't even dare to imagine it. The senior turned into a wisp of smoke and rushed into the cockpit of Tsonglei. She gripped the joystick tightly with both hands and operated it crazily. Looking at the materials on the screen, she was wet. This guy, Madanzo shook her head secretly and muttered, "Newbie, if possible, I really hope we can be partners." Taking a deep breath, the little six-winged youth grasped a light sword in each of his left and right hands. He didn't waste any words as he directly charged into the endless void original demons. No matter what the outcome was, all living creatures and the primordial void devil were absolute enemies. It was serious about slashing the primordial void devil. Zhu, we're brothers. Let's slash the little monsters together. It appeared beside Zhu, bathed in golden light. Zhu showed a hint of surprise. After a moment of silence, he said, "You don't have to help me. Do I have to help you?" Metatro chuckled. "I'm helping the Zhu classmate who played games with me all night. You're the same, right?" Zhu didn't say anything, but gave Madanzo a soul-stirring smile again. But Madanzo didn't see it. It was serious about slashing the primordial void devil. At this moment, it had already charged into the dense horrors with its light swords in both hands. "Maybe I don't have to leave this world of the dead." Zhu exhaled slowly. Behind him, a huge, pale figure had already jumped up from the ground. Messenger 1. He stood in front of Messenger 1 and put his hand on the middle of its face. "You don't have a name yet, do you?" Messenger 1 didn't move. "What do you want me to be called?" Zhu asked softly. Messenger 1 still didn't move, but the figure on its forehead. Ludic's closed eyes seemed to shake. Then, Zhu, his heart moved, and his voice became low at the same time. "I'll give you a new name, Angel of Wrath. This is you." It had a name, and it was no longer quiet. Its pale body instantly turned blood red, like the flesh and blood of a human being after its skin was peeled off. Its face that didn't have anything on it instantly cracked open a mouth, and inside it were sharp teeth. It still didn't have any other facial features, but it seemed to be enough. A pair of jagged wings broke out from the back of Messenger. No, from the back of the Angel of Wrath. The Angel of Wrath leaned back crazily, and its hands were pushed open. At this moment, the Angel of Wrath let out an earth-shattering roar. Then, like a wild behemoth, the Angel of Wrath crashed into the endless primordial void devil. At this moment, amidst the horrifying primordial void devil that filled the sky, the six-winged teenager was crazily slaughtering. The Angel of Wrath crazily tore apart one target after another. At the same time, a sneaky but huge figure was always wandering around the six-winged teenager and the Angel of Wrath, picking up the corpses one by one. But with just them, how could they block the endless amount of void yuan demons? Such a struggle was futile. Then Zhu took a deep breath and pressed its palm on its chest. There was also a hole that couldn't be filled. Zhu, who was calling out to it? Zhu subconsciously looked at the broken curlet beside it. It didn't know whether it was suitable or not, but it had already soared into the sky. This was probably the current limit of curlet. The unstable body was now making rumbling sounds, as if it would fall apart at any time. However, at this moment, the door of the cockpit opened, and the girl slowly walked out, reaching out her hand. She didn't say anything, and all her words seemed to have been contained in the look in her eyes. "Don't worry," Zhu said softly, "this won't be the end. I'll wait for you to come back." Finally, the God Devourer reached its limit and completely fell apart in the air, and the girl fell with it. A gentle light wrapped around her, allowing her to land safely on the ground. She raised her head, looking at the tiny figure that rushed into the horrifying monsters, and murmured very softly, "Wait for you to come back," in the quiet courtyard where nothing could invade. The silver-haired girl had already woken up, probably since Curlet rushed into the sky. The silver-haired girl didn't blink her eyes. wearing the fox mask, he said in a low voice, "Speaking of which, if I didn't come, the person beside you would be you. Would you hate to be replaced like this?" After a long while, the silver-haired girl shook her head. "Meshi, I'm fine." Then, she looked at him in the fox mask and naturally leaned into his arms. "I'm fine too." This was like some kind of exchange game. He couldn't help but carefully ponder the meaning of the girl's words. Then, he said cautiously, "I'll stay with you for a while." "Okay." The sword made of light shattered one after another, and when it finally reformed, it was already dim and lightless. Even the six-winged youth who claimed to have slaughtered hundreds of thousands of void original ancestors could only hover unsteadily, panting. After all, it was a dead guy, and only a wisp of its will had come. On the ground, the corpses of the void original demons almost filled the whole second upper capital city, like a landfill of wreckage. No matter how violent the Angel of Wrath was, it was drowned in the endless numbers at this time. Look, even if it evolved into a void Azura, there's still a difference. I'm afraid it's a fake, and it hasn't even awakened the ability to control the void original demons. Medanzo couldn't see where Songlei was for a long time. Maybe it was hiding somewhere by now. It could do it with the cowardly character of a newcomer. "I'm still a little unwilling," the six-winged youth slowly exhaled, looking at the crack that occupied the whole sky. At this moment, he gave up on continuing the slaughter and used the last bit of his strength on his wings. He wanted to fly to that crack, to see what was behind it. That was where Zhu came from. Perhaps his home. Could it be that he had directly transmigrated back to the world of the last page of the Holy Land? He suddenly had such a strange idea. If there was a more direct connection between these two worlds. The crack was right in front of him, and as long as he reached in, he could already feel the chaos, nothingness, and some kind of greed inside. A great terror, an unprecedented terror, that even he began to tremble from the depths of his soul, suddenly appeared. In the crack, a huge palm suddenly stretched out. The moment the palm stretched out, thousands of void original demons were annihilated instantly. The palm directly grasped Medanzo, who was about to break through the crack. Time seemed to stop for a moment. Even the heartbeat seemed to stop. Medanzo seemed to see the owner of the huge palm in the crack, the other party, gazing at her motionlessly. They confronted each other just like that. Second after second, the whole world paused and there was no sound. The 52nd second, a figure suddenly bumped over, and time began to flow again. At this moment, Medanzo saw he suddenly became huge and turned into a giant of light, but there was an empty hole in his chest. The giant of light directly pushed back the palm in the crack. Then, the giant of light instantly tore the crack in the sky wider and jumped in. Medanzo, who was almost out of oil, fell from the sky at this moment. It looked at the ground. At this moment, where was the void original demon? They were all dead. Chapter 2277. Medanzo had already landed in a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The dead primordial void demons almost covered the entire second upper capital city. It raised its eyes and looked around with a blank expression. The giant of light that Zhu had transformed and had already entered the crack. However, Medanzo still remembered the huge palm that stretched out from the crack. It didn't seem to be as simple as a primordial void demon. It wasn't a primordial void ancestor, nor was it a higher-level void Azura. Void Azura was already the highest-level form of the primordial void demon that all the undying creatures in the dimensional crack knew about. However, the appearance of the huge palm made Medanzo feel that the highest-level form of the primordial void demon might not just be a void Azura. Say, "Senior." A familiar voice sounded. Medanzo knew that Yulia would definitely appear when it was safe. She would survive until the end. But at this moment, she was no longer driving Songlei. Instead, she was alone. She looked a little tired, but overall, she was still okay. This guy, could it be that she was slacking off while fighting? Senior. Senior sister Yulia had already come to Medanzo's side. Did we win? Medanzo shook its head. It didn't seem to have a definite answer either. After the giant of light appeared, the primordial void demons that had already invaded this page world were all killed in an instant. Then, the giant of light directly tore open the crack and entered it. After that, no more primordial void demons, the so-called emissaries, entered through the crack. Some time had already passed, but the giant of light still hadn't appeared. Madanzo looked at the huge crack in the sky and couldn't help but think of entering it again. However, at this moment, the crack in the sky seemed to have become smaller. It's not becoming smaller. It seems to be healing. Senior Sister Yulia said quickly. It's starting to disappear. The crack was starting to disappear, and no more primordial void demons appeared, which meant that victory belonged to this world. It seems to be Juju, Madanzo said thoughtfully. The giant of light was formed by him, and it seemed that he was the only one who had the ability to heal this crack. The two of them silently looked at the crack that stretched from one end of the sky to the other, continuously shrinking. In the end, only a thin crack was left, but their expressions gradually became serious. Because until now, the giant of light had not appeared again. The remaining space was clearly not enough for the giant of light to pass through. Right at this moment, a world-shaking roar came from afar. A huge blood-red figure broke out of the wreckage on the ground. It was the enraged angel that was almost drowned by the original void demons. A newborn void Azura. What does it want to do? Senior Sister Yulia couldn't help but be shocked. At this moment, the angel of wrath bent its legs slightly and then started to jump. The moment it jumped, the ground seemed to sink a little. The ground around the angel of wrath had completely sunk and cracked. In the end, the angel of wrath rushed into the remaining small crack at a terrifying speed, completely entering it. The crack had completely closed, leaving only a faintly discernible line. The line had also disappeared, as if it had been wiped clean from the sky. Juju still didn't appear. How could this be? Senior Sister Yulia sat on the ground at once, staring blankly at the flawless sky. It's fine if Juju didn't come back, but the pages didn't appear either? No. It's fine if the pages didn't appear, but why didn't Juju come back either? It's not like this, it shouldn't be like this. Senior? She subconsciously looked at Senior 11, only to see that Madanzo's expression was no less confused than hers. Waiting in silence. When the ultimate beast was knocked down, they thought that all the danger had passed and heaved a sigh of relief. But it turned out that the ultimate beast was just a prelude. The real despair had yet to come. The overwhelming number of messengers appeared, as if it meant that the world was about to come to an end. It was too scary, so scary that they even forgot to think. It was so scary that they didn't even know how to react. They numbly watched everything happen until the appearance of the giant of light. The crack suddenly disappeared, and the world didn't end. Everything happened too fast, and the people who didn't even know how to be afraid now seemed to have the joy of surviving a disaster, as if they didn't know how to feel. Could it be that something else would appear next? After the crack disappeared, second upper capital ushered in dusk. The blood-red clouds gradually dimmed. When Yulia and Madanzo returned to the pilot school in silence, they saw the students silently cleaning the school or moving the people who died in the disaster. They were actually injured, but there were no more people. Even if they were injured, they didn't grit their teeth and persevered. There was no electricity supply. They dismantled the tables, chairs, doors, and so on in the classroom and set them on fire. Flames lit up everywhere in the school, illuminating the place. In the second upper capital, similar flames appeared in many places. In the quiet night, people coexisted with a large number of messengers, remains, and the whole second upper capital fell into a strange silence. Zengency. A figure rushed toward Madanzo. It was a girl with glasses, Mary. Looking at her, Madanzo was stunned. It seemed to hesitate, but it didn't dodge until Mary crashed into its arms and pushed it to the ground. Great. You're fine, that's great. It sounded like it was about to cry. Madanzo hesitated and didn't reach out its hand to comfort Mary's back. However, at this moment, Yulia pressed its hand down and pressed it against Mary's back. Madanzo rolled its eyes, and Yulia shrugged with a bitter smile. In the end, Madanzo didn't move its hand away. Instead, it caressed Mary's back and said, "It's great that you're fine, Mary." After the battle, they were exhausted, but the pages didn't appear. Even Juju didn't come back. Perhaps Madanzo and Yulia needed something urgently. "Mary, have you seen Meshi?" Yulia asked in a low voice. Mary calmed herself down and shook her head. "I know. It's a mess everywhere, and many students can't see her. Maybe you could try to look for her. But maybe there wasn't much hope." "I see." Yulia nodded. She didn't look sad or anxious, so naturally, she wouldn't start. She just looked at the bonfire in front of her, as if she had lost something. "All right, I heard that Ms. Mirai is out of danger," Mary quickly said. After defeating the first big monster, Ms. Mirai was sent to the infirmary under the base. Just now, someone cleared the way down and found Miss Millet in the infirmary. Her heartbeat has recovered. This should be good news in the midst of misfortune. However, Madanzo and Yulia didn't look happy at all. "Shinji, you?" Madanzo shook its head. "Nothing. I just feel that it's a pity that the summer festival we prepared for so long ended like this. After all, we prepared for a long time. It just found a random reason." Mary was stunned. Suddenly, Mary took off her glasses and stood up. At the same time, she pulled Madanzo up and smiled. "Let's sing." Madanzo looked at Mary in shock. After taking off her glasses, Mary had a breathtaking face. Was this a face that was sealed by the glasses? It didn't know. It only knew that the firelight in the distance shone on Mary's face, and it was bright red. Yulia also looked at this vitality girl in surprise. She wasn't in the mood. However, Mary grabbed Yulia's arm. She pulled Madanzo and Yulia at the same time and quickly ran forward, climbing up a half-collapsed wall. "I have always had a wish." Mary stood on the high ground and looked down at Madanzo and Yulia, who were pulled up by her. "It is to confess to the person I like on an important day." Madanzo was a bit distracted. "I like you, Shin-san." It looked at her and saw Mary take a deep breath. She crossed her arms around her mouth. "I'm serious about confessing," she said loudly. Yulia nudged it with her elbow and said with a smirk, "Senpai, it's time for you to start your performance." According to Madanzo's personality, it would probably reject Mary with the reason that it was gay. After all, it had rejected Mary more than once. However, Madanzo didn't say anything this time. It just kept silent. "Don't reject me. Even if you don't agree, don't reject me." Madanzo opened its mouth and met Mary's expectant gaze. It suddenly smiled and climbed up to the high ground with Mary. It smiled and said, "Let's sing our duet." This time, it took the initiative to hold Mary's hand. Mary was stunned for a moment and then showed a gentle smile. She took a deep breath. Under the light of the night sky and the bonfire, the girls singing slowly came out. There was no performance, just pure singing. She just sang like that, and the little boy's voice unknowingly became the same as hers. It became a duet between the two of them. "This is really..." Yulia smiled bitterly and shook her head, but she also stood up in the end. "So be it." The three of them sang together, and their voices could be heard far away in the silent night. The rest of the students slowly came from the ruined campus. They were attracted by the singing and were attracted to Mary's side. More and more people came. More and more people came. Some of the students held torches in their hands, while others held candles in their hands. Suddenly, a soft and melodious sound came from the sky. It was a perfect match for the three of them, because this was the song that Madanzo had been practicing all this time. The girl with long silver hair gave it the song and specially asked it to play. But in the end, Madanzo didn't have the chance to complete the song. It was a pity. Madanzo subconsciously looked at Mary, who was next to it, but Mary's body suddenly emitted a faint light. Madanzo was stunned. However, at this moment, a loud sound came. Everyone's eyes subconsciously looked at the night sky. It was a bright light under the night sky. Fireworks. These are the fireworks that were originally prepared for the summer festival. Who set it off? But it's so beautiful. They were looking at the fireworks in the sky, and only it was looking at her. As for her, under the dazzling fireworks, her figure was like a fluttering firefly, gradually fading away. "Nice to meet you, Shin-san." "Ma," Madanzo hurriedly blurted out, then said in a dull voice, "Me too. Nice to meet you." Fireworks, no matter how bright and lonely. The girl was here, on the rooftop of the only building that was still in good condition in the pilot school. The old white piano that was originally in the pilot's dormitory was now here. It was brought here by him, wearing the fox mask. In fact, the girl with silver hair could have brought the piano here by herself, but she insisted that he bring it here for her, as if she was acting spoiled, because this was the last bit of time he had left to accompany her today. At this moment, she was sitting in front of the old white piano, playing the song that she had given to Metatro. She was very skilled. "Congratulations on your graduation, Mary-san," the girl said softly. The piano was still playing. It was a song that could make one's soul rest in peace. It was also the first time that he, who was wearing the fox mask, listened to this song in its entirety. At the beginning, he listened to it in a music box. At the beginning. The girl continued to speak softly. "The disaster is over, but please don't forget to hug the people around you. You can hug each other, you can cheer, you can kiss. At this moment, you can do what you want to do most. This victory was not easy to come by, so please cherish the present and every second of the rest of your life. You've also graduated." "Me too." Her white fingers finally stopped on the piano keys, and the music lingered in the air. She suddenly rushed out and directly flew in front of him, wearing the fox mask. The girl reached out her hand, as if she wanted to take off his mask at all costs. This time, he didn't stop her and allowed her to take off his mask. The moment she took off his mask, the girl was silent and motionless, and a drop of tear fell. He was wearing a pair of black glasses in front of her. There was only a trace of confusion in his eyes. He looked down at the girl in front of him and opened his mouth. I think I had a dream. I should be in the crack just now." The girl with silver hair shook her head lightly. "No, I'm here to take you away." He smiled faintly and reached out his hand to the girl with silver hair. "Phew." At this moment, Meshi appeared at the broken door of the rooftop, panting. He also reached out his hand to her. "Phew." She looked at him. End of this chapter. Chapter 2278. The chaos here was like the chaos at the beginning of the world. Clear and turbid air currents were mixed and entangled. This was the world behind the crack. The chaos was boundless, and there was no breath of the living, as if this was more like the world after death. In the chaos, there were countless messengers, which were the void, original demon species. They were spying or coveting, all because a figure that shouldn't exist appeared here. When he arrived, it was also the moment the giant light disappeared. He replaced the giant light that was fighting fiercely with something. A terrifying battle that happened in this land of chaos came to an abrupt end. What followed was the eruption of the main body of the giant palm, which contained violence, anger, and resentment. It only had one giant palm that appeared from the chaos. As for the rest of it, it was hidden in the chaos. But just this one palm made the countless void original demon species in the chaos not dare to act rashly. These void original demon species that had no heart and only had instincts also had something that they were afraid of. There's only one palm. Luochio had indeed replaced the giant light that was supposed to be here, which was Zhuji. The replacement took effect the moment the girl took off the fox mask recklessly. In the same page, there shouldn't be two identical protagonists at the same time. And soon, he came in person. The Book of Gaia could only bear such a heavy burden. It seems that even the Book of Gaia can't describe it. Or, Boss Luo sized up the palm in the chaos, as if he wanted to, or had already seen through the chaos, to see the owner of the giant palm behind the chaos. It can't bear you either. The giant palm suddenly stretched out toward him. The void original demon species along the way were annihilated instantly. This was a giant palm that was enough to hold a planet directly. Boss Luo suddenly sighed, as if muttering, "I don't know when it started, but I don't care about such a scene at all." His eyes turned into the color of chaos in an instant. As if it sensed some danger, the giant palm suddenly stopped. Boss Luo was expressionless. "Where are you?" The giant palm seemed to have broken some kind of taboo in an instant and pushed forward again, and even more fiercely. Boss Luo said calmly, "I want to see you." The huge palm madly pushed forward. Boss Luo said calmly, "I've already seen it." The huge palm suddenly trembled and then suddenly retreated. It retreated all the way, as if it had touched a flame and was afraid of being burned. It retreated like lightning and even slowly faded away, fading away from the chaos. "Do you need me to look for you?" The palm vanished in the blink of an eye, and the terrifying aura that had suppressed all primal void demons dissipated as well. Only a faintly discernible thought remained in this place, but it also quickly dissipated. This thought simply conveyed a message: "Don't come over." He didn't know what kind of tone and intonation he used. Without the suppression of the gigantic palm, the endless void original demon species in the chaos instantly became ferocious, but they did not approach Boss Luo in his present state. As if he didn't exist, the void original demon species were now crazily swimming in this chaos land, as if they were trapped in a narrow fish tank. The densely packed void original demon species seemed to be expressing a kind of irritation at the moment. Boss Luo's gaze fell on one place. That was a huge red figure, the Angel of Wrath, that had just successfully evolved into a void Azura. The Angel of Wrath had broken through the page world at the last moment before the crack disappeared and stepped into this chaos land. At this moment, the Angel of Wrath was crazily killing all the void original demon species that approached it or were approached by it. Luochio pondered for a moment and then took a step forward. In the next moment, he had already appeared in front of the Angel of Wrath. He looked at Ludic, whose body had completely merged with the Angel of Wrath. At this moment, Ludic was more like a statue. "It seems that someone has reserved you." Luochio frowned and said, "On you, there's an indistinct fate like the one in the underwater city." The Angel of Wrath was still and motionless. Boss Luo shook his head and said indifferently, "Since you have walked into another fate, you can't take this thing." The boss stretched out his palm, and a teardrop-shaped pendant quickly appeared in his palm. The Holy Glory necklace. "I want to take your things for free." Red silk threads suddenly appeared, like the silk of the red spider lily. They appeared under the Angel of Wrath's feet, and then covered it. In just a moment, the Angel of Wrath had been absorbed into a huge red silk cocoon. Boss Luo waved his hand, and the red cocoon disappeared from this chaos land. Although this was chaos, it was only the chaos described in the Book of Gaia. It was not a real chaos land, nor a real dimensional void. The deep space is the place that belongs to you. There would always be an end to everything. In the pilot school, Madanzo and Yulia had quietly left when the students' attention was attracted by the fireworks. They didn't go far and just stayed in a quiet corner. Yulia looked at 11 hesitantly. 11 seemed to have fallen into silence because of Mary's disappearance. That memory was too terrifying. It was as if they had really experienced another life. Or rather, in their immortal lives, they were given another life. When she didn't remember her origin and only thought that she was a student in the pilot school. But when she thought that she was really Shinji, senpai, how do we wake up? Yulia suddenly asked. Madanzo said, "I'm afraid that we have to thank your Xing Chuang's ragdoll bear. It was it that caused the special device that controls everyone in this world to crash, right? I'm from Xing Chuang." Senior sister Yulia sucked in a breath of cold air. F***CK. She forgot about that. Prince Desolate, the ragdoll Desolate. Senpai, where is that ragdoll bear? Where is it? Yulia hurriedly asked. Madanzo couldn't help but frown and immediately said, "It shouldn't be here anymore. Maybe it was killed by Zhu, and only one ear is left." As for why it provoked, I don't know. So, did you really create the ragdoll bear? That's desolate. Yulia bitterly smiled. She knew that she couldn't hide it, so she simply confessed. That's right, it's the Prince Desolate from the previous world. This prince really has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. He actually secretly attached a thought to me, and then followed me to this place. Madanzo opened its mouth. Even it couldn't do such a thing. No, it did. It followed Celia into the Book of Gaia. 50 steps, 100 steps? It shook its head with a bitter smile. Fortunately, such a naughty child is just a character in the book. At this moment, a whirlpool appeared behind the two, and the suction force that they were almost used to. This is, Yulia subconsciously said. Senpai, you got the page? When? Metatro shook his head and subconsciously looked beside him. As expected, Celine was there, the half-dead young lady that Metatro had taken care of after arriving at this place. When Madanzo looked at Sister Celia, its gaze softened. You want another world without doing anything. If I didn't get the page, then who got it? Yulia looked around in disbelief. On an intact rooftop of the driving school, a fluorescent light suddenly floated out. It was the same fluorescent light that appeared when Mary disappeared. Vaguely, Yulia seemed to see Meshi's figure. She was in someone's arms, but the whirlpool had already sucked her in. In a panic, Yulia instinctively grabbed Madanzo's arm. Senpai, protect me. You're King doing it again. In the void of the dimension, a lone undying being was wandering. From afar, this undying being saw a group of super-powerful void original demons gathering. This caused this lone, undying being to turn pale with fright. This was the depths of the void of the dimension, the deep space zone, which was called a forbidden area by countless powerful beings in the void of the dimension. Ordinary small, undying beings entering the deep space zone without forming a black team was like a rabbit running into a wolf's den. But there was no other way. This undying being had always been alone and was used to traveling alone, so it didn't have the intention to form a team. It was just that it had always been careful and didn't get involved in any of its actions. If it wanted to kill someone, it would kill it. Everything was planned before it took action. If it didn't take action, it would be as steady as an old dog. It had always been like this and never suffered any losses. But there was also that one time when it was mysteriously sucked into a spatial tremor. Afterward, it sent a clone to check on it. But who would have thought that this clone didn't turn back after it left, and it even completely lost contact with this clone recently? It was as if a small part of its soul had been forcibly torn away. For an undying being like it, this was a great disaster. Not only did its strength regress, its soul wasn't strong enough, and it couldn't enter the strange places in the void of the dimension. This time, if it hadn't heard that a hidden zone had appeared in the deep space zone and that it seemed to hide some secrets of primordial, it wouldn't have entered the deep space zone. However, even after entering the deep space zone, it hid far away and tried its best not to come into contact with any undying beings, but to encounter such a large group of terrifying void original demons. Logically speaking, these void original demons have always been in a lazy state. Only when they come across food will they gather like crazy. Could it be that they're gathering to besiege some powerful, undying being? It lowered its head and pondered, a glint suddenly appearing in its eyes, as if it saw a chance to take advantage of the situation. Void original demons only know how to devour the souls of undying beings, and have no interest in anything else. To be able to attract so many void original demons to gather, it must be an immeasurably powerful, undying being. Such a big shot must be rich, right? I'm rich. Is my bad luck over? It instantly lurked and slowly approached. It was extremely careful and was fully prepared. Once there was any sign of trouble, it would escape without hesitation. That should be the one who rushed here after hearing about primordial, it suddenly thought. But at that very moment, a beam of light actually pierced through the void original demons. A majestic and frightening power sent many void original demons retreating in an instant. Its gaze focused, and it saw that the void original demons were besieging a large crimson cocoon. At that moment, beside this crimson cocoon, There was an undying being wearing a gray robe and holding a magic book, madly slaughtering all the void original demons that came close. It even saw a strange emblem on this undying being's robe. It was the emblem of an Ouroboros. Could this guy be from the Gate of Truth? There were many powerful forces in the void dimension, and the Gate of Truth was known as one of the most mysterious organizations along with the Transcendent Organization and the Secret Society. The Ouroboros was the emblem of the Gate of Truth. What is that crimson cocoon? It got closer and closer and was more and more interested in this crimson cocoon. However, its wish to pick up a ready-made item seemed to be going down the drain. This gray-robed mage was actually getting braver as he fought and was about to break through this group of void original demons. It narrowed its eyes at once. Then it quietly drew a circle in front of itself with both hands and extended its palms into the circle. This circle was a special space, and inside it were all the things it had collected and created over the years. Soon, it took out a huge rifle-like weapon that was 10 meters long from the space inside the circle and aimed at that gray-robed mage. It licked its lips, and its eyes narrowed at once. "Boss, you must give me a big hit. Take care of this little newbie, please." It was about to shoot. A terrifying aura suddenly descended. Its heart beat violently, and the aiming device on the weapon moved instantly, only to see that the void original demons in front of it were actually scattering madly. As if they were fleeing, that gray-robed mage looked as if he was facing a great enemy, and his expression was solemn. A void original demon with the appearance of a flying ant was slowly flying into the group of void original demons, and on the back of this void original demon sat a human figure. That person walked casually, and with a casual grab, he caught a fleeing void original demon, directly gouged out the head of this void original demon, aimed at the big head, and began to gnaw fiercely. This guy is actually eating void original demons? It instantly felt as if it had fallen into an ice cellar, and a chill spread all over its body. It put away the rifle in an instant, turned around, and ran, with no intention of stopping at all, nor did it look back. It kept running. The human figure on the void original demon slowly stood up and saw that big dark red cocoon, and even more so the gray-robed mage beside it. Finally, I can have a change of taste. The man on the void original demon suddenly cracked open his mouth and laughed. That mouth and teeth, stained with the brain matter of the void original demon, looked unusually frightening at this moment. "Who are you?" The gray-robed mage's expression instantly darkened, and he asked in a low voice. "Me?" The man on the void original demon tilted his head and laughed casually. "Wang Xiaohu, the most handsome one in the deep space forbidden zone." As soon as he finished speaking, the man on the void original demon rushed out in an instant. The gray-robed mage had long been prepared. With a wave of his hand, the magic book in front of him flipped open wildly, and a series of 12 powerful defenses were instantly deployed. However, this guy who called himself Wang Xiaohu just threw a punch, and with one punch, all of the mage's defenses were instantly destroyed. This punch didn't even stop, and in the next moment, it had already blasted the mage's chest. The mage's eyes widened in disbelief, and as he looked at his penetrated chest, his gaze couldn't help but be filled with resentment. Damn it, when can mages stand up? Wang Xiaohu then tore apart the mage's body with both hands. A ball of light instantly rushed out of the mage's body. Wang Xiaohu opened his mouth in an instant and sucked hard. The ball of light was instantly sucked into his mouth. He chewed, swallowed, burped, unsatisfied. Chapter 2279. The original void demons were fleeing, and in no time, they had already escaped into the deep space. In a vast area of darkness, there was only the big red cocoon, Wang Xiaohu, and the flying ant original devil under Wang Xiaohu. Wang Xiaohu couldn't help but size up the big red cocoon. His situation was very special. He was a combination of a human and a large number of original void demons, and thus retained his human characteristics. At the same time, he also retained the characteristics of the original Void demons. To him, he had the desire to devour both sides. The big red cocoon in front of him made him restless. Directly, as long as he ate this big red cocoon, it would be very beneficial to him. Following his instincts, Wang Xiaohu directly inserted his hands into the big red cocoon, wanting to tear it apart. He was neither a human nor a pure original Void demon, and the rules of both sides were dispensable to him. It could be said that he was in a state of chaos. It was as if Wang Xiaohu had opened a piece of corn. His appetite was already showing. But at this moment, the big red cocoon moved. In an instant, the big red cocoon turned into a ferocious force. This force was compressed in an instant, and the immense pressure made Wang Xiaohu narrow his eyes involuntarily. He sensed the emergence of a force that threatened him. But it was good to be threatened. It meant that the taste of prey would be better. He was waiting in the void, arms crossed, a devilish smile on his face. The red radiance had been compressed to the extreme, and what appeared in front of Wang Xiaohu was a figure that was about the same size as him. At this moment, the aura of the figure that was emitting tremendous power suddenly changed. Wang Xiaohu subconsciously frowned. He actually smelled a similar scent from the other party. The red light dissipated, and in the deep space, a pale face appeared in front of Wang Xiaohu. The figure was tall and slender, wearing a white windbreaker and a long robe. On the face, there was a half-erect white bone mask, and on the left side of the face, there was a completely pitch-black eye. There was a small round hole at the collarbone below his throat. Wang Xiaohu also had such a hole on the left side of his skull. At this moment, the flying ant original devil suddenly shivered, seemingly because of the aura emanating from this figure. Wang Xiaohu still stood with his arms crossed in front of his chest. Although his appetite was still strong, he had changed his mind at this time. He stared at the figure in front of him, and his eyes turned black at this time, so he kept sending the same kind of information to the other party. "What's your name?" Wang Xiaohu asked directly. It was unknown whether or not the other party understood, but he remained silent. After a long time, he opened his mouth and slowly said, "Angel of Wrath." "Angel of Wrath?" Wang Xiaohu blinked his eyes and nodded. "That's a good name. It's fine to use it as a nickname. My name is Wang Xiaohu. From now on, you will follow my surname and be called Wang Xiaolong. From now on, I'm your big brother. Follow me. In this deep space, street will be ours sooner or later." "Follow you?" The Angel of Wrath seemed to be in deep thought. It had just completed a certain state, and its mind was still in a sluggish, nascent state. "Why, you don't agree?" Wang Xiaohu laughed coldly. The Angel of Wrath shook its head. Its intuition told it that this guy who called himself Wang Xiaohu was very dangerous. At its current level of nascent, he was really very dangerous. "That's enough." Wang Xiaohu laughed. "For now on, we are the Longhu brothers. Come, follow me to hunt the deep space street." "Hunt." Angel of Wrath. Wang Xiaolong seemed to have an inexplicable reaction to these two words. At the same time, it also felt a sense of hunger. "Okay." Wang Xiaolong nodded and was about to move. "Wait a minute." Wang Xiaohu suddenly shouted at this moment. At the same time, Wang Xiaohu turned around and punched across the air. In the distance, following Wang Xiaohu's punch, there was a terrifying explosion in an instant. "Let's go." Wang Xiaohu chuckled and stepped directly onto the flying ant primordial devil. Boom! The prop in front of it exploded in an instant. It looked at the completely dead creation in horror and couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Was it discovered? What the hell was that thing? It felt like it had seen something incredible. Who on earth walked out of the big red cocoon? And that guy riding on the flying ant primordial devil, it was already completely far away from the place where the incident happened. Even if it was still spying, it was only using the creation that it left behind as a springboard before it escaped. However, the secret backup plan it left behind was still discovered, and it was afraid that it couldn't hide in this place anymore. With that in mind, it hurriedly fled again. However, before it fled, it quickly sent a message to a certain direction in the deep space forbidden zone. Special information for sale. Meet and discuss in detail what happened just now had been completely recorded by it. It believed that this information could be sold at a good price. Because in the dimensional void, there was such an organization that was extremely greedy for all kinds of information. They secretly recorded everything and were known as the Encyclopedia of the Dimensional Void. Secret Society. Among the many giants of the Dimensional Void, one of the three most mysterious organizations. Ah, 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 ah. Senior Yulia was shouting perfunctorily, and she stepped on something. Oh, here we are. This time, she landed in a very good position. Full marks. She began to size up this new page world immediately. And at the same time, she felt the degree of suppression of her power to judge the difficulty of the beginning. Senior, what's the situation? Senior Yulia asked hurriedly. Do you want to have King move away from me first? Oh, this is... The little boy rolled his eyes. He had been roaming the dimensional void battlefield for countless years, but this was the first time he had been ridden so many times. Senior, Miss Serene is here. Senior's sister, Yulia, pointed at a figure lying on the ground not far away and said, Serene is there? Then this is... Madanzo subconsciously looked to her side. There was also a person lying there, but it wasn't Serene. The person beside her was Kay or Lily. But Madanzo remembered that when the vortex opened, Kay or Lily wasn't there. But after descending, this little maid of the Rose Mansion appeared. Senior's sister, Yulia, frowned and said, after defeating the apocalypse behemoth, I found this child, but she seemed to have suffered a big blow. I had no choice but to settle her down temporarily. After that, I couldn't care about her anymore. I didn't expect that Kay or Lily would also. It seems that someone did it on purpose. Madanzo looked meaningfully at Senior Yulia. It was the same in the Holy Land's page world. I'm afraid there are traces of it being done on purpose. She suddenly remembered what the Xing Chuang teddy bear said in the student union president's office. Senior Yulia was shocked, but she said calmly, Senior, did you find something? Madanzo shook her head casually, then picked up her pipe and said, Although I'm not sure yet, I will find out the truth. I'll bet on the name of the Heavenly Kingdom's leader. Senior, you're making a fool of yourself. Senior Yulia shook her head secretly. Her relationship with Madanzo was very mysterious. They tested each other, distrusted each other, and selectively exchanged information. But under certain circumstances, they would also trust each other. She walked forward and looked at the place where she landed. In front of her was a desolate city. The architectural style was similar to the one in the Holy Land's page world, but it was different. It seemed that the religious atmosphere was slightly stronger. The entire chaotic city was built around a huge church complex in the center. As for the huge church building, half of it had already collapsed. This capital seemed to have experienced a terrible disaster, but it wasn't that there were no people living here. In this desolate city, there were still quite a few people. However, these people who lived in the city were dressed in rags and looked dispirited, like people who were about to die. Most of them just sat silently in front of their own houses. Senior Yulia got a handcart, put Celia and Kay or Lily on it, and pushed it herself, because Senior Levin was directly suppressed in this page world, and he only had the strength that matched his body shape. Senior, did you notice that the way these people look at us is a little strange? Senior Yulia suddenly asked. Madanzo muttered, Be careful. Although these guys look old and weak, their eyesight is not much better than that of wild beasts. Looking at the situation, the order in this city has collapsed. These people seem to have been abandoned here. Someone is following them. I know. Senior Yulia nodded. She had lost her ability to turn into mist, and now she only had a little fighting ability left. As for her experience, she was quite rich. After a while, the two of them pushed the cart and turned into an alley. At the same time, two figures quickly walked into the alley. They were two guys who directly wrapped their bodies in gray cloaks and covered their faces with rags. But the moment they walked into the alley, they found that they had lost sight of their targets. While they were puzzled, a slender leg kicked toward one of the gray-cloaked guys. The strength was good, and the angle was even better. The long leg directly hit the vital part of the gray-cloaked guy, kicking him to the ground. At the same time, a beautiful figure landed steadily on the ground with a backflip. Senior sister, Yulia, shrugged her shoulders and chuckled. Then, she looked at the other guy in the gray cloak. This page whirled suppression on her, and her senior was almost to the limit, which meant that the people in this page world were at most at the level of ordinary people. She was not afraid. Damn it. Beat him. The guy who had been kicked to the ground screamed in pain and roared furiously. In an instant, the other gray-cloaked guy directly flew over. Senior Yulia smiled. Her fighting skills were the most powerful, and she could kick and pinch people. Seeing the other guy pouncing over, she directly gave a side kick. The timing and strength were almost perfect. She was very satisfied. However, senior sister, Yulia, sucked in a breath of cold air. She felt a heart-wrenching pain coming from her toes. Her foot should have kicked the other party's chest, but it felt like she kicked a steel plate. At the same time, the other guy suddenly puffed out his chest, and Senior Yulia was instantly bounced away by a strong force. She couldn't help but be startled. At this moment, the other guy sneered and directly lifted the gray cloak on his body. Senior Yulia widened her eyes in shock. In front of her was a strong man wearing only a pair of worn-out leather pants. However, this strong man's upper body was embedded with steel plates. She could even see the traces of the man's solid muscles and the steel plates that were embedded because of the compression. Not only that, this strong man's entire left arm was also made of metal. It looked like some kind of inferior metal that was haphazardly pieced together. The guy who had been kicked to the ground at the beginning also got up at this time and lifted the cloak on his body. Senior sister, Yulia, immediately thought to herself, "Holy sh*T. This guy even has a steel plate on his head." However, fortunately, there were only two of them. Senior Yulia took a deep breath, thinking that since there were only two opponents, she should be able to deal with them. At most, she would need to use more strength. "Senior, take care of yourself. I might not be able to take care of you later." Senior Yulia directly turned her head at this moment. "Say, Senior?" He didn't know when Metatro had raised his hands, but he was still trying to signal him with his eyes. Senior Yulia's heart skipped a beat, and she subconsciously raised her head, only to see that there were 1, 2, 3, more than 20 figures above the alley. Some of these guys looked like the two strong men with different modifications on their bodies, and some were even holding weapons in their hands. There were metal rods full of nails, crossbows, meteor hammers. There was even one who was holding a machete. At this moment, he was smirking and gently tapping his palm at the back of the machete. The man with the machete looked down at them condescendingly, narrowed his eyes, and sneered. "Do you still want to continue?" Senior Yulia took a deep breath. Then her eyes narrowed, and she instantly jumped up. The man with the machete frowned and was about to swing his machete. Senior Yulia directly dropped to her knees and said, "Sorry, I was wrong. I surrender." The man with the machete secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Then he heaved a sigh of relief and said in a deep voice, "Take them away. 3 women and 1 child. They should be worth a lot of money." Yes. Chapter 2280. In a dirty dungeon, there was a group of young people who looked miserable. Most of them were young girls, and some of them were young boys. Metatro, senior sister Yulia, and the others were now in such an environment. They were captured by a group of bandits. After entering a certain area of the ruined city, they were sent to this place. This place probably wasn't the base of the bandits, since there was a handover process. After the bandits had obtained some wealth from the person in charge of the dungeon, they left immediately. What a bad start. Yulia held the lock of the dungeon's iron door with both hands for a long time before shaking her head. This gave Medanzo a signal. In this place, she couldn't even use star creation. There was no light in the dungeon, and they could only maintain their sense of time by putting food into the dungeon at a fixed time every day. K.R. Lily woke up the night she entered the dungeon. After Yulia explained the situation to K.R. Lily, this maid of Rose Mansion didn't get too excited. She just curled up in a corner and didn't talk to anyone. However, Yulia was good at communicating with people. There were a lot of people who were captured in the dungeon, and they were good people to communicate with. From the mouths of these people, senior sister, Yulia, and the others quickly grasped some information about this place. The place they were in used to be the safest, most prosperous, and most stable place in the human world, God-blessed city. It was also the headquarters of the God-blessed church that fought against the demons in the world. However, a disaster came. Overnight, the church was defeated and the nobles and elites left one after another. Only the people at the bottom were left, and God-blessed city became a desolate place. In this place, there were no moral and legal restrictions. In order to survive, the abandoned humans did almost anything. Some of them found some leftover equipment in the headquarters of the church and started to modify their bodies to a certain extent. They quickly gained a certain level of strength. Soon, the once prosperous, God-blessed city was divided into strongholds of different sizes by these people. Illegal invasions between strongholds were treated as war. It was a lawless city with no owner. In the past, other than the chaotic battles between the strongholds, there was a terrifying force that suppressed the humans in this city of God protection. In other words, this terrifying force was ruling over the current God-blessed city and was enjoying the decline of the God-blessed city. As for the owner of the dungeon, he was actually a slave trader. This slave merchant had colluded with all the forces in the strongholds in the city of God protection. In other words, the dungeon was a powerful force, and it had accumulated a considerable amount of wealth and resources through selling slaves. With the resources to survive, they would naturally be able to attract more people to work for them. With more people working for them, it also meant that the business of the owner of the underground prison would become bigger and bigger. This was a positive cycle. Don't you want to escape from the city of God protection? Where could he go after escaping from the heavenly blessing city? Ever since the church was defeated and left, the outside world fell into a state of fear. Between the city-states, there were tons of low-level demons everywhere. How many people could make it to the next city-state alive? Even if they made it to the next city-state, who could guarantee that the next city-state wouldn't be another city of God protection? Perhaps the Radipur under the stars is the last pure land for humans. Radipur. Yulia blinked her eyes. The person who spoke to her was a young girl. She was one of the important sources of information for her. However, there was a price to pay. For example, a piece of moldy bread that was given to her during lunch. This was a friendship that cost a piece of moldy bread. The young girl called herself Ramen. She was born after the destruction of the city of God protection. She was 15 years old this year. In other words, it had been 15 years since the city of God protection was destroyed and the world fell into a state of fear. Yeah, Radipur. Ramen saw a trace of humble expectation and confusion in her eyes. I heard from my grandfather that it was the last place where the nobles and elites of the human race left the church. Humans won't be attacked by demons there. The land is fertile, and people can walk freely in the suburbs and bathe in the fresh wind. Sister Yulia, have you seen the sea? I heard that you can see the sea in Radipur. She had seen it before. This was the last time Yulia heard about this world from Ramen. That night, Ramen was taken away and never came back. The small boat of friendship was swept away by the giant waves. Something's wrong. Yulia and Madanzo were squatting in the corner and discussing something. The young boy in front of them was no longer the boy with rosy lips and white teeth. Madanzo had been starved to the point that she was only skin and bones. Yulia was in a similar situation. In this world, they were in a very ordinary state. They couldn't eat their fill every day, let alone escaping this place. They would be distracted by hunger even if they wanted to do something. Even in such a short period of time, Selen's situation was better than theirs. This was why Madanzo insisted on feeding her with her own food every day. Kate or Lily would also give Madanzo a portion of her food every day to maintain Selen's body. After that, she would continue to not communicate with others. What's wrong? Madanzo leaned weakly against the damp wall and carefully tore off the moldy bread. Logically speaking, with your looks in mind, as slaves, shouldn't we be high-class goods? Senior sister, Yulia, straightened her starving skeleton-like face rather seriously. Madanzo blinked her eyes. And high-class goods, shouldn't they be very popular? Yulia analyzed step by step. But why can't we sell them? After they were captured and locked in the dungeon, they didn't even get to see the owner of the dungeon once, let alone being sent to an exhibition. Madanzo thought for a while and said, maybe it's because they're poor? That makes sense. Yulia sucked in a breath of cold air. If they were classified as high-class goods, with God-blessed city, his current living conditions, not many people would be willing to spend a large amount of resources on a slave that could only be used as a toy. If they wanted to buy slaves, they would probably buy slaves like Ramen, who looked normal but had all the necessary functions. Selin hasn't woken up, and the owner of the dungeon doesn't care. Yulia suddenly said, I've counted the food that they put in every day. They actually included Selin's portion. Yeah, Metatro only nodded slightly. It was obvious that he had noticed this illogical part long ago. Unfortunately, all the information could only be obtained from the slaves locked up in the dungeon. Based on their current situation, it was of no help at all. This couldn't help but make these two people who had once commanded the wind and summoned the rain outside begin to doubt their lives. They wondered if they would really die in this cold and damp dungeon in the most sullen way, bidding farewell to their lives. Even the senior sister, who was very good at hiding, couldn't sit still as time passed. Days passed one after another. After being locked up in the dungeon for a month, the uneasiness in senior sister, Yulia's heart had reached its peak. She wanted to escape from this dungeon. No matter if she succeeded or not, she had to do something, and the only chance was the food that would be put in twice a day. She had already thought of a way and discussed it with Madanzo countless times. Senior, are you ready? Yes. Then let's do it. The small iron plate in the food slot slowly opened. Madanzo and Yulia looked at each other and instantly rushed to the food slot. At this moment, the iron gate of the dungeon opened, and a group of fierce-looking guys with weapons rushed in. Their bodies were crudely modified. You, and you. The man in the lead quickly reached out and pointed at senior sister, Yulia, and the other three. Follow me. Madanzo and Senior looked at each other again. They didn't expect this to happen. They were confused about the situation in front of them. They were silent. In a luxurious living room, they were sitting in front of a luxurious long dining table. Although the food in front of them wasn't the best they had ever eaten, it was obviously worth a lot of lives in a place like the city of God Blessing. In the living room, there was no one except for the four of them. There wasn't even a guard. It seemed like the owner of this place wasn't afraid that they would take the opportunity to escape. So, what's going on? Yulia couldn't help but frown. Madanzo shook her head and picked up a bowl of mushroom soup. She carefully fed it to Celia. However, K-Air Lily had a different reaction compared to when she was in the dungeon. K-Air Lily's eyes seemed to have a trace of uneasiness. She seemed to like the cold and damp places more. Yulia slowly exhaled and grabbed a piece of bread. She chewed it slowly. Just like that, the door of the living room suddenly opened. A guy wearing an iron mask and holding a scepter pushed the door open and walked in. The Iron Mask aristocrat walked in quickly, and behind him were four beautiful and fair-skinned girls who were only wearing light veils. The Iron Mask aristocrat had a slender body. When he walked, he had the posture of a real aristocrat. Yulia and Madanzo looked at each other expressionlessly. The Iron Mask aristocrat walked to the host's table. He bowed to everyone and said in a low and hoarse voice, I'm Alan, the owner of the dungeon in the city of God Blessed. Everyone, are you satisfied with tonight's dinner? It was indeed night outside. The city of God Blessed was dark, but there was only one place that was illuminated. It was the religious community in the center of the city of God Blessed. Yulia secretly glanced at Madanzo and then said with a bitter smile, Let's not talk about whether we're satisfied or not. So, is this the last dinner? The owner of the dungeon, who called himself Alan, shook his head and said, this won't be the last dinner. If you are willing, this will be your first sumptuous dinner. From now on, you will enjoy more, much more. Yulia froze. Was there some idiot with a lot of money who bought the four of them? Of course, it's not without conditions. The owner of the dungeon chuckled and said, you have to pass some kind of selection. Only when you meet the conditions can you live a good life. Yulia frowned and said subconsciously, this. Sir, what can we do for you? The owner of the dungeon walked to the window of the living room and pulled open the huge curtain. He pointed at the only place that was illuminated in the city of God Blessed. Do you see that place? The castle of the ruler of the city of God Blessed. Madanzo hesitated and said, what about it? The owner of the dungeon casually glanced at the young man and continued to chuckle. Do you know who the ruler is? They shook their heads. The owner of the dungeon said, he is a real aristocrat, a noble among the upper-level vampires. As long as you can satisfy this true noble, you will be able to live in the castle that will be brightly lit even in the dark of the night. Warm clothes, sweet honey, and a soft bed. Yulia smiled bitterly. What a beautiful future. I'm afraid it's not easy to get this kind of future, right? Of course. The owner of the dungeon nodded and said, you have to go through some selection. Do you know why I haven't contacted you since I bought you from the refugees? Madanzo and Yulia looked at each other. To observe? Yulia asked tentatively. To observe us? The owner of the dungeon nodded. That's right, to observe. Actually, I've been observing you since the first day I bought you. You don't have the numbness and despair of the residents of the city of God Blessed. You're different, so I've been observing you for more than a month until I felt like you couldn't hold on anymore and wanted to leave this place. The senior smiled bitterly. This is probably like hunting geese all day long and then being eaten by the geese. End of this chapter. Chapter 2281. You guys aren't from the God Blessed city. The owner of the dungeon suddenly said. Senior sister and Madanzo didn't say anything. The owner of the dungeon, Alan, smiled and said, you guys don't have the smell of the people from the God Blessed city. You guys should be from another city-state. Also, this city-state might have been conquered not long ago. This guess was in line with senior sister Yulia's appearance when she appeared in the city of God Protection. She didn't seem to fit in with the city at all. But don't worry, I'm not interested in finding out where you guys came from, the owner of the dungeon said calmly. The owner of the dungeon said indifferently. In this land, no matter what your origin is, you will eventually become the plaything of the vampires. No one can escape from this fate. Demons were rampant in this page world. However, above the demons, there were races like vampires, and they had the ability to enslave demons. Senior sister Yulia learned from her cellmate, a moldy bread, that the vampires used to rule the world and had absolute dominance. However, after the Great War, the vampires faced the regression of their race. After a long period of time, the humans began to become stronger, and the God's Blessing Church, a special organization that fought against the remaining vampires, was born. However, with the revival of the vampires' true ancestor, the vampires who were hunted down became stronger again. Not only did they conquer the God-blessed city, but they even swept the world again. Senior sister, Yulia, pondered for a moment before asking, what exactly is the selection you mentioned? The owner of the dungeon said calmly, if you guys agree, I'll arrange some necessary training for you guys. As for the content of the selection, I'm sorry, but even I don't know. Even you don't know? Senior sister Yulia was surprised. The owner of the dungeon said helplessly, everything depends on the will of the ruler in the castle. Unfortunately, the real owner of the God-blessed city is a very fickle person. However, I can give you guys targeted training based on the previous elections. However, you guys have to be prepared because you don't have much time left. Metatro could not help but frown. He could sense a hint of being chased away by the owner of the dungeon. The owner of the dungeon said, originally, I didn't plan to participate in this election because I didn't have any suitable candidates. Until you guys appeared. Senior sister Yulia said subconsciously, so, other than you, someone else will provide people to participate in this election? The owner of the dungeon said calmly. In this place, I'm not the only one who knows how to sell slaves. Besides, no one said that only slave merchants of the God-blessed city lord. The ruler of the God-blessed city is a high-ranking noble, even among the vampires. The rulers of the nearby small city-states will also have some thoughts. Senior sister and Medanzo looked at each other's words. Senior sister, sest TTS God-blessed city. The master of the dungeon said indifferently, It's only good if you win. The conversation at the banquet was obviously not satisfactory. They were now staying in the room arranged by the owner of the dungeon. Compared to the environment in the dungeon, it was 10 times better. However, their situation seemed to be worse. Senior sister Yulia touched the metal collar on her neck. This was what the owner of the dungeon, Alan, asked someone to put on them when they left. The collar only had one function, which was to prevent them from escaping halfway. This thing could explode, and the remote control was in the hands of the owner of the dungeon. It was a product of the Holy See before the God-blessed city was conquered. Senior, what do vampires like? Senior sister Yulia suddenly asked. Don't you know? Medanzo said casually, Blood. What else can it be? Of course, she knew that. She shook her head and said, As far as I know, the kingdom of heaven has always been entangled with vampires throughout its history. Senior, you have been a traitor in the kingdom of heaven for so long, so you should be very familiar with vampires. Perhaps you know something that others don't. Medanzo instantly rolled her eyes. What do you mean by being a traitor in the kingdom of heaven for so long? These words, he already knew that I was a traitor who was disloyal and could not be nurtured properly. Okay? Medanzo simply turned off the light, covered herself with the blanket, and went to sleep. This body is so weak that it has eggs. Well, it doesn't have eggs, then it has eggs. It seems that it doesn't have eggs either. In short, it was sad. The lessons arranged by the owner of the dungeon were quite complicated. However, they were basically used to train aristocratic etiquette. In the middle, there would be some miscellaneous lessons such as horsemanship, sword fighting, astronomy, geography, and so on. This page world gave senior sister Yulia and Medanzo the power buff, but it didn't reduce their intelligence. Although the training mission was heavy, it wasn't difficult for them. On the other hand, K.R. Lily seemed to have a hard time and couldn't keep up with the pace. On the third day, she was even pulled out by the owner of the dungeon, Alan, for other training. Selin didn't need to be trained. She wouldn't wake up at all. However, the owner of the dungeon didn't abandon Selin. Instead, he ordered a maid to take care of her. This was the condition that Medanzo agreed to participate in the selection, the only condition. As for the owner of the dungeon, other than the fact that he called himself Alan and vaguely revealed that he was a human aristocrat before God Bless City was destroyed, senior sister Yulia couldn't find any information about him. He always wore an iron mask and never showed his true face, which made him seem mysterious. Unknowingly, 10 days of training passed by in a flash. You guys really surprised me. Not only did you complete the training program ahead of time, but your results were also above the standard. As for Miss K.R. Lily, you guys also gained something. Not bad, not bad. After the last day of training, the owner of the dungeon once again held a sumptuous banquet to entertain the 3 people who completed the training. This was also the first time that Yulia and Medanzo saw K.R. Lily in the past 10 days, and they were slightly shocked. The girl in front of them was elegant, luxurious, and wore a long dress. She constantly revealed a soul-stirring charm. They didn't even see the gloomy and autistic look in K.R. Lily's eyes when she first came to the page world. It was as if she was a different person. Are you okay? Yulia walked to the little maid who used to work in Rose Mansion and asked in a low voice. I'm better than before, Miss Yulia, K.R. Lily said with a smile. Miss Yulia, don't you like the current me? I like the current you. Yulia narrowed her eyes and said with a smile. K.R. Lily covered her mouth and laughed coquettishly. She didn't seem to care. The door of the hall opened, and the owner of the dungeon appeared again, accompanied by many beautiful maids. After a series of praises, the owner of the dungeon, Alan, said seriously, Tomorrow night will be an important moment that will change your future lives. For this reason, I specially prepared something for you guys. Some jewelry, one for each of you. Senior's sister, Yulia, didn't expect that it would be such a flashy but impractical thing. Although wearing it would improve her overall image, she would rather have the owner of the dungeon provide her with a sharp dagger. However, in the end, she, Madanzo, and Kair Lily were at most beautifully packaged goods. She casually put on a pair of gemstone earrings in front of her and began to carefully listen to the details that the owner of the dungeon provided about the selection. It was a forbidden area that couldn't be entered casually, the original location of the headquarters of the God Bless Church. This was the consensus of all the strongholds in the God Bless city. It was the territory of the ruler, the vampire upper-level nobles. However, some people who weren't afraid of death would sneak in with a trace of luck. However, at sunrise, the intruders' corpses would appear on the square of the God Bless Church as headquarters. Their corpses would be pierced through by a huge metal spike, and they would appear in front of everyone like an exhibit, warning those who wanted to get lucky. At night, a few horse-drawn carriages slowly drove into the forbidden area. Yulia quietly lifted the curtain and looked outside. She saw 1 or 2 horse-drawn carriages coming out from different streets. They seemed to be people who were participating in this election. There seems to be a lot of people, because the bounty increased. The owner of the dungeon, Alan, slowly said, "I just received the news today. The person in the castle will give the winner twice the bounty. Therefore, some people who are watching can't sit still anymore." He suddenly increased the bounty? Madanzo frowned. The dungeon owner said calmly, "I told you that the owner of the castle is a fickle guy. He can increase the bounty or decrease it temporarily. All of this is just a game to kill time for him. However, you guys are willing to play this game." Yulia sneered. She realized that she could argue with this dungeon owner. As long as she didn't go too far, this dungeon owner was quite patient. Maybe it was because of his cultivation as a human noble? "What's that?" Madanzo's voice suddenly sounded. There was a hint of surprise in his voice. This was something that Senior Yulia rarely heard. This was because most of the time, Senior 11th's shock and astonishment were all faked. However, this time, it seemed very real. She subconsciously looked out of the carriage. At this moment, the carriage was passing by a huge square. There were densely packed metal spikes on the square. Corpses were hanging on these metal spikes. Some of them had turned into white bones, some were rotten, and some were even fresh. However, this wasn't the reason why Madanzo was surprised. What really surprised Madanzo was that Yulia gasped. Among the numerous metal spikes, there were a few that were particularly tall. They seemed out of place among the other metal spikes. Hanging from these huge metal spikes were dried corpses wearing some kind of uniform. Those are the former clergymen of the God Bless Church. The dungeon owner said calmly. After the God Bless city was conquered, the corpses of the clergymen were hung here as trophies. This is the vampire's way of showing off to the defeated clergymen of the church. Legend has it that the nobles of the church had fled to the last pure land, Laputa, the ideal kingdom in the sky. They were hung here so that the losers in the sky could see them clearly. Yulia and Madanzo didn't care too much about the dungeon owner's explanation. What really caught their attention was that on these pillars of shame of the God Bless Church, they found a huge metal armor. Cats. The armored man, cats. It wasn't just cats. There was also Chintiandal and a huge toad. "They are dead." Madanzo's voice was low. Actually, Senior's sister, Yulia, had an incredulous look on her face. Chintiandal, the armored man, cats, and the toad, Taramuro. In the pages of the Book of Gaia, the 4 supporting characters were all dead except for Bluebird. Moreover, they were hung up in such a despairing way. The carriage suddenly became silent. An extremely oppressive atmosphere quietly spread around Yulia and Madanzo. "Are you nervous or afraid?" The dungeon owner's voice was low. It was obvious that he had noticed the abnormality in the two. "Mr. Allen," Yulia let out a sigh and said slowly, "I want to confirm that the God Bless city was conquered 15 years ago. 15 years and 7 months. The dungeon owner instantly gave a more specific answer. The true ancestor of the vampires came to the God-blessed city and defeated all the high-level demon hunters of the church in one night. He also nailed the church's leader on the God-blessed square. Since then, darkness descended, and the human nobles fled. Why? You should have learned this during your training. It's just a review. Yulia smiled casually. After all, the things outside are quite impactful. The dungeon owner said calmly, "We are about to enter the castle. Adjust your mentality." With that, the owner of the dungeon closed his eyes and remained motionless. The carriage slowly stopped, in front of a huge and majestic palace. This was the final destination that all the contestants could reach. From the carriages, some well-dressed young girls or handsome young men, as well as some who seemed to be the leaders of various forces, were walking down from the carriages. The dungeon owner, Alan, was obviously very famous among the crowd. Along the way, many people came up to greet him. Suddenly, the gate of the palace opened, and a group of guys in black armor walked out. The leading black-armored warrior said in a deep voice, "Please show me your invitation letter." Hearing this, the dungeon owner, Alan, slowly took out a gray envelope from his pocket. There was a golden emblem on the envelope, a blooming rose. This is Yulia couldn't help but stare. She seemed to have seen the rose emblem on the envelope before. At this moment, a blood-curdling scream rang out. Not far away, a slightly fat middle-aged man in luxurious clothes was pressed to the ground by two black-armored warriors. Their sharp swords were placed on the middle-aged man's neck. Forging an invitation letter is a capital offense. The middle-aged man screamed in horror, "Impossible! My invitation letter can't be fake. Last time, I personally gave Sir Asakes a precious document from the old world. It was an invitation letter that Sir Asakes gave me. It can't be fake. Go and ask. Sir Asakes can testify for me." The sharp swords slashed down, and the middle-aged man's head rolled on the ground. In front of the majestic palace, everyone was silent. The middle-aged man's corpse was directly dragged away by the black-armored warriors. "Senior, just now that guy said, what's sir?" Yulia opened her mouth and looked at Madanzo. Her eyes flashed with even more disbelief. "Asakes," Madanzo said a name softly. Yulia suddenly shivered. She remembered where she had seen the golden rose emblem on the invitation letter. That was clearly the rose on the signboard of Rose Mansion. End of this chapter. Chapter 2282. Perhaps it was just a person with the same name, if there was no rose emblem on the invitation letter. But obviously, coincidences wouldn't happen multiple times. At the venue of the Holy Maiden ceremony, the people who were swept into the Book of Gaia by the black mud were basically scattered in different pages. If the boss of the Rose Mansion was really in this page world, it wasn't inconceivable. However, what made Senior Sister, Yulia, feel strange was that Boss Arthas was clearly just an ordinary person in the free city of the Holy Light Kingdom. Yet, he had become a vampire nobleman here. She could only ask him face to know the reason for this. However, after experiencing the Calvin incident in the last page world, Senior Yulia wasn't sure if Boss Asakes was also a reincarnated outer god. It couldn't be so coincidental. Perhaps even everyone who entered the venue of the Holy Maiden ceremony that day was some kind of arrangement. This was very scary. That was in the Holy Light Kingdom. The Holy Light Kingdom was clearly the back garden of a real powerful being in the dimensional void, the owner of the Heavenly Kingdom. Who could arrange all this in the back garden of such a terrifying, powerful being? Boss. The first person she thought of was the boss, but she quickly denied this idea. Based on her understanding of the boss wouldn't, at least not in such a secretive way. What was there to arrange? The Kingdom of Heaven was also sold out by the shop. Therefore, in her understanding, the boss not only wouldn't do it, but he even disdained it. It seems that the water in the Holy Light Kingdom is a bit deep. Senior Yulia secretly glanced at Madanzo. Senior, 11, had become silent since he heard the name Asakes. Probably, something had stirred in his heart. Senior Yulia wasn't in a hurry to ask Madanzo. There would always be a time when Madanzo would say what she wanted to say. Moreover, even if he succeeded in asking the question, it was likely that he had been misled. He needed to be more careful when dealing with this senior, 11. Otherwise, he would be tricked at any time. But surprisingly, even after hearing the name, Essex, Kate or Lily didn't react at all. Logically speaking, if she could get information about Boss Essex, the one who would be the most excited should be this little maid of Rose Mansion. At this moment, she was still elegant and calm, just like the noble lady in everyone's impression. Kate or Lily was secretly pulled out by the owner of the dungeon, Alan, for another 10 days of training. Who knows how the owner of this dungeon trained her? Or should I say, train? Many restricted scenes flashed through Yulia's mind. The commotion in front of the glorious palace quickly subsided. Under the fierce gaze of the black-armored warrior, the people who came to participate in the selection carefully followed the instructions and walked into the glorious palace in fear. The palace originally belonged to the God-blessed church, and it was remodeled to become what it was today. However, the main structure obviously didn't change. The religious aura here was still very strong. Someone might have sneaked in. Madanzo suddenly whispered in Yulia's ear. This was the first time it spoke after remaining silent in front of the door. You mean that invitation letter? Yulia quickly reacted. Madanzo only nodded and then muted it again. Yulia began to recall the details of the commotion just now. That guy who was directly beheaded by the black-armored warrior didn't look like someone who was stubborn after being exposed for forging an invitation letter. Originally, with the fear that people had toward this vampire noble, no one would dare to forge an invitation letter to get through. There were still many corpses hanging on the square outside. Someone who secretly swapped the invitation letter that originally belonged to that unlucky guy and sneaked in. Thinking of this, Yulia quickly walked forward and caught up with the owner of the dungeon, Alan. She asked in a low voice, "Mr. Allen, do you think we will be able to see the owner of this castle later?" At this moment, the owner of the dungeon turned his head and looked at Yulia. Who knows? Maybe he will show up when he is interested. The owner of the dungeon said calmly. In the past, the Rose Earl, as trusted aides, were in charge of the selections. Only the winners could be brought to the Rose Earl. Yulia said again, "Mr. Allen, can you tell us more about this Rose Earl?" The owner of the dungeon, Alan, suddenly looked at them with a hint of suspicion. Yulia said calmly, "Maybe if we can know how this Rose Earl feels, it will be helpful for the selections. After all, the purpose of the selections is to pick out people who can satisfy this Earl." "You're quite ambitious." The owner of the dungeon suddenly chuckled. "However, this is a good thing. In the past, the people who were brought to the selections were basically forced to do so, and most of them were unwilling. Perhaps only someone like you, who is willing to risk everything to climb up the ranks, even to the point of selling your body to the devil, will have more opportunities." Senior sister, Yulia, didn't feel unhappy that someone had exposed her true nature. The main thing was that with her current strength, she couldn't be unhappy, right? "We don't know much about this, Rose Earl." The owner of the dungeon said slowly, "We only know that 15 years ago, when the God-blessed city was defeated, this Earl suddenly appeared and killed a bishop of the God-blessed church. He opened the defense barrier of the God-blessed church and made a great contribution. In the end, he was given this God-blessed city. However, no one knows the details. Count Rose himself wouldn't say much about it either. As for Rose Earl, as personality, how should I put it? Inside a huge library in the depths of the glorious palace. The floor was littered with books that had been thrown everywhere. These books were extremely precious. Most of them were once the collection of the God-blessed church. A small portion of them were the documents excavated from ancient ruins by the humans outside these years. A man with disheveled hair was standing in front of a bookshelf, quickly flipping through an ancient book. Just where is he hiding? The man closed the book in his hand and sighed. At this moment, the door of the library slowly opened, and two young girls with delicate faces slowly walked in. They stood on both sides of the door. The one who walked into the library was a middle-aged man who had a steady aura and was wearing luxurious clothes. "The great God-blessed Lord, your most humble servant is here." The man completely ignored the middle-aged man's exaggerated performance. He picked up another ancient book and flipped through it. "Norsta, I need more documents." "As you wish, my master." The middle-aged man named Nasta bowed with a smile. "I'll definitely bring all the books in this world to you." The man nodded casually and lowered his head to read the books. Nasta saw this and slightly shook his head. One of the maids by the door slowly walked to the man in front of the bookshelf with a tray in her hands. On the tray, there was a crystal cup filled with bright red blood. The smell of blood had reached the man's nose. The man who was reading the book subconsciously reached for the cup. He paused for a moment, but didn't stop for long. He finally picked up the cup and said indifferently, "Nothing. You may leave." Nasta bowed respectfully and slowly retreated. The two maids did the same. They didn't dare to look at the man's face until the door of the library was closed again. He still doesn't want people to see his bloodthirsty attitude? Really? Nasta chuckled outside the door. His eyes were gloomy. The two maids in front of the door couldn't help but tremble. They seemed to have heard something dangerous. In an instant, Norsta pulled one of the maids into his arms and lowered his head to bite her neck. The other maid held the tray tightly and didn't dare to raise her head. After a long time, the maid who was bitten fell to the ground weakly. She was barely breathing. Nasta took out a handkerchief and wiped his mouth. He looked at the maid who was holding the tray coldly and said, "Clean this place up." At this time, a group of 4 warriors in black armor walked to Nasta. "Master Nasta, everyone who participated in the selection is here except for a forger. Also, the forger has been executed on the spot." "Forger?" Nasta frowned and sneered. "These rats in the city of God are getting more and more restless. It seems that the corpses outside the square aren't enough of a deterrent." He muttered to himself. The warrior in black armor said, "Master Nasta, do you need me to bring some people to clean up the streets that don't listen to orders tonight?" "It's too noisy." Nasta shook his head and glanced at the door of the library. "Our master is a pacifist." The warrior in black armor didn't say anything else. Pacifist? Pacifist? Where do they get their food? Do they really rely on this election that only happens once in a while? Vampires' thirst for blood isn't something that can be satisfied by their physiological needs. "Come on, let me see the quality of this batch," Nasta said with a faint smile on his face. "What? The selection wasn't like this at the beginning?" This was probably a place similar to a lounge. It could also be considered a relatively private place. At the very least, each representative had their own individual room. At this time, the owner of the dungeon was sitting on a leather sofa. He was not surprised by Yulia's surprise. In the beginning, it was a competition similar to the gladiator arena, and those who went on stage were basically some vicious fellows or fellows who had committed crimes. Yulia and Madanzo frowned. The dungeon owner's voice sounded again. It was an arena of death. Someone would die in each battle. However, the losers didn't die in the hands of the winners. Instead, they died in the hands of the spectators. "There are spectators?" Yulia froze. "In this castle, Rose Earl isn't the only vampire." The dungeon owner sneered. "Did you see the warriors in black armor at the entrance? Those were the ones who degenerated and became vampires. Back in the arena, the losers would be turned into tributes and food for the vampires. Their blood would be sucked clean by those hungry beasts in an instant. Only the final winner could survive. However, even if they survived, they would become warriors in black armor or something similar. But now, Yulia couldn't help but frown. It was supposed to be a death arena, but now it was like a beauty pageant. The difference between the two seemed to be too big. Who knows? The owner of the dungeon said indifferently. The selection method gradually changed. Maybe the vampires are tired of the smell of the thug's blood. Or maybe the days are better and they want to improve the relationship between food. It's a very simple question. If you were a vampire, would you rather drink the blood of a dirty thug or hold a delicate beauty in your arms and slowly enjoy it? Yulia shrugged. The dungeon owner smiled and said, "Now, they aren't as barbaric as before. These vampires know that high-quality food isn't easy to come by, so they won't destroy it easily. The young men and women who were chosen in the selection process were generally kept in captivity. Although they couldn't avoid the fate of being used as food in the end, they were at least high-grade ingredients. Usually they would eat well and live well. It was many times better than living outside. If Rose Countess likes you and gives you the embrace, you will become one of them. Don't forget, I'm the one who recommended you to participate in this election. After saying this, the dungeon owner suddenly stood up. It seemed like he was going to go out. Mr. Allen, where are you going? The dungeon owner said casually. Although there are people from other small cities who came to the castle, this is the city of God. Do you understand? This is my home ground. If I don't go through the back door, it will be a waste of my efforts in the city of God. That makes sense. Senior sister, Yulia, likes to do things like manipulating things behind the scenes the most.